The Great Ming, winter solstice, the 21st year of Yongxing. Zhao Mu drifted in and out of consciousness. A woman's weeping grew louder by the second. Whoa, how could the Esco family strike so viciously? He brought it on himself. Who told him to accost that young lady? How can you say that as his elder sister? How can I not? Mother, have you thought how I will hold my head high? Your brother, he might well have been framed. Spare me. He's known as a good-for-nothing rogue, stealing chickens and dogs, harassing widows. He must have done something untoward to that girl. Even if he did, they were betrothed, and we've already accepted the bride price. It's not that big a deal, is it? Normally it wouldn't be, but the Li family clearly means to swindle our household. Father, mother, I've heard talk that Li girl's caught the eye of someone far above her station. She's just making up this charge to get rid of third brother and ruin him utterly. Mark my words, this will never end peacefully. Still, third brother only has himself to blame. He never walked the straight path. That's why the whole village believes the Li family's lies instead of him. If father hadn't saved the clan elder's life all those years ago, our whole family would have been driven out of the village long ago. But this time, that old debt of gratitude is surely spent for good. Father, mother, I don't mean to lecture you, but if you keep coddling third brother like this, he'll turn into a total lost cause. Zhao Mu's eyelids fluttered, and he forced them open. All he could see was a crowd huddled around him, old and young, men and women alike. He could just make out their faces, twisted with sorrow or rage. A small boy leaned against the edge of the heated brick bed, staring at Zhao Mu out of sheer boredom. Zhao Mu tried to speak. Boom. A flood of memories crashed over him, knocking him senseless once more. In those memories lay an entire new life he now inhabited. He lived in a dynasty called the Great Ming, yet this realm bore little resemblance to the Ming of his past life, ruled under an unknown era name. His home was a hamlet called Kailingu. His father, once a soldier turned hunter. His mother, soft-hearted and prone to tears. His domineering elder sister, who loved him beneath her sharp tongue. His honest, hard-working second brother. His petty, bitter sister-in-law. And his carefree, thoughtless young nephew. As the third son of the household, Zhao Mu had been doted on from birth. This impoverished family poured every ounce of their love into him. They raised a worthless scoundrel for it. At 8 years old, he'd climbed over walls to steal eggs from neighbors, leaving elderly matrons screaming curses in the street. Village women knew how to hurl vicious insults. His father, a proud man who'd never bowed to anyone, swallowed his anger and kowtowed to beg forgiveness that day. Yet his parents had not laid a hand on him, nor shouted. Zhao Mu had tasted impunity, and from then on, he reigned as the village terror of this mountain gully. Every day, he either stole livestock and petty goods or picked fights to bully others. As he grew older, he took to sneaking peeks at the village's pretty young widows while they bathed. Terrified their son would land in catastrophic trouble, his parents resolved to find him a wife, hoping marriage might calm him. The match was made, and the girl did tether him, turning Zhao Mu into a lovesick lapdog. He exhausted every trick to curry favor with her: grain, his mother's silver bracelet, his sister-in-law's dowry trinkets. He stole nearly everything in the house to gift her. If the family's land deeds hadn't been hidden deep away, he would have handed those over too. By modern standards, this girl was an obvious gold digger. But to Zhao Mu of this life, her acceptance meant she returned his affection. Every time she took his offerings, she'd flash him a sweet smile as encouragement, driving him to steal even more to fawn over her. The end result, the entire Li household grew plump and well-fed, while Zhao Mu's own family starved, lacking even grain to last the winter. They owed 10 taels of silver in debt, the very bride price paid. A family of 3 in the county town scraped by on just 1 tael a year. For a peasant girl from a remote mountain hollow to demand 10 taels as bride price spoke volumes of her greedy character. Still, Zhao Mu was utterly besotted. When his parents gently suggested bargaining the price down, he flew into a drunken rage and nearly burned the cottage to the ground. Even so, the Li girl found herself a far wealthier suitor, the village head's youngest son, and sought every excuse to cut ties with Zhao Mu. A clean break would force her to return all his gifts, even the full 10 taels of silver, a loss she could not bear. So she plotted with her 3 elder brothers to frame him. She sent Zhao Mu a subtle hint, and thinking they were to meet privately, he rushed to her home in a fevered hurry. Barely had he undone his trousers when the 3 brothers threw a sack over his head. They beat him within an inch of his life. They dragged him back to his doorstep like a dead dog and dumped him there. Now Zhao Mu lay broken, branded a lecher for all the village to hear. The Li family would surely send men over any day to annul the betrothal. and judging by the girl's greed, they would demand compensation on top of refusing to return the bride price. Trapped in unconsciousness, Zhao Mu relived every humiliating blow, his chest burning with unbridled fury. He loathed his former self to the core. How could he have lived such a shameless life? This searing rage jolted his soul back into his body, and his eyes flew wide open. A scrawny, gap-toothed boy with straw-colored hair had been leaning over to watch him. At the sight of Zhao Mu stirring, he shrieked in terror and darted behind a dark-skinned laborer as though he'd seen a ghost. The rest of the family crowded closer instead. His elderly parents stared at him, lips trembling too overcome to speak. Moments earlier, his breath had faded to shallow gasps. Everyone had thought him dead and begun saving to buy a coffin. To see him alive filled them all with wild joy. Even his elder sister, furious with him only moments before, welled up with tears, though she snapped sharply. I knew that lazy good-for-nothing was faking his death. His sister-in-law stepped back with their son to make room for the rest of the family, yet a flicker of clear disappointment crossed her face. Plainly, she'd hoped this burden of a man would die. Only his honest second brother stepped forward, his eyes soft with genuine concern. Third brother, where does it hurt? I'll boil an egg to roll over your bruises. The words sent a fresh wave of agony crashing over Zhao Mu, as though his bones would split apart. Those three brothers had struck without mercy. His body would be black and blue for a month. Those wounds were trivial next to his gnawing hunger. Second brother, is there anything to eat? Zhao Mu croaked weakly. Silence fell over the room, thick with embarrassment. Every scrap of winter grain had been stolen by Zhao Mu and given to the Li family. Not a single grain remained. They had no idea how they would survive the cold months ahead. Watching his stomach growl nonstop, second brother's heart ached. I'll go borrow grain from the village. His wife grabbed his arm and whispered urgently. This is a famine year. No one will lend us any. He'll starve otherwise. He's badly hurt. Going hungry will kill him. Second brother shook her off and hurried out the door. His sister-in-law bit her lip, hot tears spilling down her cheeks, resentment coiling. Always third brother. What of her and their son, who would waste away from hunger? Zhao Mu caught her venomous glare and hung his head in shame. His parents hesitated, unsure what to say to defuse the tension. His elder sister, tired of their silence, shot them a sharp look and spoke up. Third brother, I hate to say it, but you crossed the line. Enough. He's only just woken. Can this wait? Their mother cut her off, displeased. Fuming, the elder sister threw up her hands and stormed off, her angry voice echoing from the yard. Spoil him, go on. Spoil him until he's a useless wreck. Don't come running to me when disaster strikes. Not unless he's dead. Zhao Mu watched her storm away, overwhelmed with helplessness. That fool of a past self had died and left him with this catastrophic mess to clean up. But first, he needed food. He waited along, while before second brother trundled back, hands tucked inside his sleeves, his face tight with humiliation. Stepping inside, he said guiltily, no one in the village would lend grain. I'll head up the mountain to hunt for wild vegetables or game. You can't. His wife panicked. Dusk is falling. It's far too dangerous up there. Can we let him starve? Second brother snapped. She clung to him and sobbed, refusing to let him leave. What would become of her and their son if her husband was killed on the mountain? Sighing deeply, their father rose to head out himself, only to break into a coughing fit after a few steps. He'd been gored by a wild boar months prior, several ribs fractured and still unhealed. Zhao Mu stared at his family, one crippled, one weeping, all drowning in despair. A surge of dread washed over him. This truly was the worst possible start to his new life. Ding. Daily flash sale system successfully bound. Congratulations. Your daily 1 cent is automatically converted to this realm's currency. Congratulations. Today's 1 flash sale item, an AK-47. Zhao Mu wondered if the beating had addled his brain. He must be hallucinating. A glowing translucent screen hovered before his eyes, displaying a firearm familiar from countless games, an AK-47. Yet all around him, his family wore tattered, ancient peasant robes. The clash between modern rifle and medieval village left him certain this was a fever dream. Third son, what's wrong? Why are you staring blankly? Don't frighten your mother. His mother, son Lianji, rushed forward and pulled him into her arms, voice thick with tears. I'll fetch the village doctor. Second brother turned to rush out. Zhao Mu spoke hoarsely to stop him. Second brother, don't bother. I'm fine. The family had not a copper to spare for a healer. Even if they scraped together payment, what good would old-world medicine do for the beating he'd endured? Modern treatment would only call for rest. Second brother paused, doubtful. Truly all right. I'm fine. Zhao Mu waved a hand, brushing the glowing screen floating before his face, and froze when his fingers made contact. He could touch it, shrink, and expand its size at will. This was no hallucination. Still, he needed a single one coin to test the sale. It was only one coin. Surely they could spare it. Glancing around their bare, empty cottage, his heart sank. They did not have a single copper between them. Summoning his courage, he mumbled to his mother, "Mother, do you have any money? Just one." Son Lianji still held him crying, and answered automatically, "My boy, mother has no coins left. You took every last one." His sister-in-law, standing in the corner, turned livid. She thought of her endless hours weaving cloth for pennies, her husband's back-breaking labor, all their earnings fed to the Li girl, her own dowry stolen away. Now not a crumb of food remained, and the first thing he asked for upon waking was money. It could only mean one thing. He intended to fawn over Li Xiuxiu again, beaten half to death, and still desperate to curry her favor. A spineless cur through and through. She ground a bitter remark between her teeth. A dog can never stop eating filth. Snatching their son's hand, she stormed out of the cottage. Son Lianji glowered at her second son. "What impertinence from your wife! How can she speak so of her own kin?" Second brother forced a bitter smile and mumbled, "She shouldn't have said that. She shouldn't." Outside, his wife heard every word and cried harder. How had she married such a blindly filial fool? Their father sighed and stepped between them to calm the tension. "Enough. Third son is clearly in the wrong. Anyone would grow angry." Son Lianji's eyes blazed, ready to berate her husband, but Zhao Mu tugged her sleeve to stop her. "Mother, leave it be." Only Zhao Mu could quiet his overindulgent mother, and her endless, unconditioned favoritism had spawned the worthless rogue he once was. A doting mother raises a worthless son. His stomach rumbled again. Son Lianji's heart ached for him. Second brother hung his head in despair. Their father sighed, pushing through searing chest pain to head out and scavenge for food. Just then, his elder sister Zhao Cui returned, her face cold as stone. She tossed a sack of coarse millet onto the floor, roughly 3 jin in weight. "This is all the rough grain I could scrape together. There's no more. Spoil this useless boy all you want. Coddle him until the sky falls. He'll drag this entire family to ruin." She stormed off, still shouting her grievances, yet everyone knew her harsh words masked a soft heart. Her own in-laws lived in poverty. She'd sent countless supplies back to her natal home over the years. Sacrificing 3 jin of millet now would no doubt bring endless trouble when she returned home. Guilt gnawed at Zhao Mu's chest. How could his past self have been such a terrible son? Their father ached for his daughter, opening his mouth to speak only to fall silent, letting out a long, weary sigh instead. Son Lianji was overcome with awkwardness. "This stubborn girl has a vicious tongue. Zhao Kong, take this grain to your wife, and tell her to cook quickly. We can't let third son starve further." "Very well." Second brother lifted the sack. Once he departed, their father hobbled off to rest, his chest pains too crippling to stand any longer. Left alone, Zhao Mu ached all over and longed to lie back down. Yet Sun Lianji, certain everyone's eyes were off them, slipped her hand into her inner robe and pulled out 2 copper coins, pressing them into his palm. "My boy, these are the savings mother hid." The warm metal of the coins rested in his hand, and Zhao Mu lifted his head to stare at her. Her face, lined and worn from decades of hardship, softened with pure, unselfish love. His throat tightened, tears burning behind his eyes. Even after every terrible thing he'd done, his mother loved him without reservation. His past self had been an unforgivable fool. Emotion crashing over him, he pulled Sun Lianji into a tight embrace, voice breaking with sobs. "Mother, I know I've done wrong. I won't act recklessly ever again. I'll work hard to support this family." Sun Lianji froze. Ever since he'd come of age, he'd treated her with disdain and sharp retorts. This was the first time he'd clung to her so sincerely, and she could feel the genuine remorse. Joy and relief flooded her heart. My good boy, mother believes you, truly I do." She wept happy tears. Suddenly remembering something, she wiped her eyes and hurried out. Second sister-in-law Yang Chun tended the earthen stove, stoking the fire. Sun Lianji approached, a faint proud smile on her face. "Chun, don't speak ill of my third son any longer. He just repented to me, swore he'd bring us fine food and nice clothes." Liang Chun rolled her eyes as she tended the flames, saying nothing, yet thinking bitterly. Only you would believe that lie. Irritated by her daughter-in-law's silence, Sun Lianji decided to go boast to the village neighbors instead. Zhao Mu had not yet done a single thing to prove his remorse, but his apology counted as progress. Her son had seen the error of his ways, Why not share the good news? She would only be met with hollow smiles and sarcastic jabs from the villagers, but she cared not. Inside the cottage, Xiaomu burned with embarrassment at the thought of his mother broadcasting his empty vow before he'd even acted. One should prove their worth before bragging. To boast without results was empty talk. Pushing the embarrassment aside, he turned his attention back to the glowing system screen. He carefully placed one copper coin against its surface. Ding! Congratulations on your successful flash sale purchase. 1 AK-47, 100 rounds of ammunition. Item stored in system warehouse. Available for instant retrieval at any time. Retrieve, Xiaomu whispered tentatively. In the next instant, a heavy, familiar assault rifle materialized in his arms. The cold metal, substantial weight, none of it felt like an illusion. He detached the magazine and racked the bolt, crisp metallic clicks ringing out. It was a sound every man loved to hear, proof the firearm was utterly real. Somehow, in this ancient dynasty, he held a genuine AK-47. Xiaomu twirled the gun in his hands. Most boys were bound to love firearms like this. He could barely wait to head up the mountain. With this thing in his possession, he feared nothing. Muntjac, wild boars, sika deer, tigers, lions, giant black bears, none of them stood a chance against him. This gun would mean endless game for his family, meat on the table every single day. His stomach rumbled loudly. Sharp pangs of hunger dragged Xiaomu back to reality. In his weakened state, holding the gun for even a short while left him gasping for breath, his arms throbbing with soreness. Just then, a warm aroma of cooked rice drifted over. Xiaomu's hunger grew unbearable. He hastily stowed the gun into his system space and craned his neck to stare toward the doorway. Sun Lianji stepped inside carrying a bowl of thick congee. Such snobbish lot. What's wrong with my son anyway? He's repented his wrongs. He's bound to be better than their worthless boys. She grumbled bitterly under her breath. Clearly, she'd run into scorn while boasting about him to the neighbors. Given Zhao Mu's terrible reputation in the village, she'd likely gotten an earful of harsh retorts. Seeing how desperately Zhao Mu stared at the bowl, Sun Lianji cut her rambling short, afraid to delay him any longer, and hurried over to feed her son the congee. Zhao Mu refused to be spoon-fed. He snatched the bowl, blew on the hot porridge, and drained it all in one go. The bitter cold of the day melted away. As the hot congee slid down his throat, warmth spread through every inch of his body. With food settling in his stomach, strength slowly returned, and even his aches dulled significantly. Once he felt steady enough to stand, Xiaomu could not resist climbing down off the Kong to head outside. He wanted to test his gun up the mountain. On top of that, there were 6 mouths to feed at home, yet they only had 3 caddies of brown rice left, barely enough to last 2 days. He could not lie around uselessly any longer. He was the one who dragged this family into ruin. It fell to him to do something to turn their fortunes around. When Sun Lianji saw Zhao Mu get to his feet, she flew into a panic and reached out to steady him. "Oh my boy, your wounds haven't healed. You can't go wandering off." Zhao Mu stepped out the door and saw the sky darkening. Night had already fallen. Disappointment weighed on him. He turned his head and spotted his nephew Zhao Xiaoshan. The boy was squatting beside the earthen stove, clutching a bowl and sipping something in tiny mouthfuls, as if he were feasting on the most exquisite delicacy. "Curious," Zhao Mu called out. "Xiaoshan, why aren't you drinking inside the house?" Zhao Xiaoshan jumped in fright, nearly dropping his bowl. He scrambled to his feet trembling. He held the bowl out toward Zhao Mu with tears in his eyes and stammered, "Second uncle, I didn't mean to sneak food. I was just so hungry. Please don't beat me." Confused, Zhao Mu glanced down at the bowl held out to him. It was not plain water at all. It was thin rice water, barely any grains floating in the watery broth. Zhao Mu looked his nephew over. The boy was already 8 years old, yet years of malnutrition left him small and stunted, no bigger than a 5 or 6-year-old child. Thin, skittish, with dry yellowed hair, he shivered in his threadbare cotton jacket, head bowed, clutching the bowl and too scared to meet Zhao Mu's gaze. The sight made Zhao Mu burn with self-loathing. He wanted to slap himself hard across the face. "I was nothing but a beast in my past life." Zhao Mu drew a deep breath to stifle his raging hatred for his former self, then turned to Sun Lianji. "Mother, why didn't sister-in-law cook all the rice we have? We only have this little rice left. Naturally, we save it for you. You're still injured and unwell," Sun Lianji replied. Though her heart ached for her grandson, her love leaned heavier toward her son. Zhao Mu forced a bitter smile. "Mother, bring out all the rice and cook every grain. Tomorrow I'll go work, hunt in the mountains, earn money. I swear our family will never go hungry again." Sun Lianji hesitated. "I feel sorry for Xiaoshan too, son, but your wounds haven't mended yet." "Mother, Trust me just this once. Will you listen to what I say? Zhao Mu raised his voice. Through the window, his elder brother Zhao Quan and sister-in-law Liang Chun peered outside. One's face held worry, the other undisguised disdain. They thought Zhao Mu was throwing another tantrum. Son Lianji cared for the rest of the family too, and seeing her youngest son so stubborn, she relented. She also seized the chance to sing her son's praises. She fixed a stern glare at Liang Chun and shouted, "What are you gawking at? Come out and cook at once. Our third boy says every member of this family will get a full meal." Liang Chun's eyes widened in shock as she stared at Zhao Mu. Had the boy been possessed by some evil spirit? He'd truly changed his ways, wanting everyone to have their fill. What are you standing there dazed for? Are you unhappy with this? Son Lianji wore a scowl, yet inwardly she swelled with pride. Look how thoughtful my son has become now. Zhao Mu burned with embarrassment. He thought to himself, Mother, that rice was sent by eldest sister, not money I earned myself. What credit are you claiming for me? Liang Chun was starved as well, and her heart ached for her son. At the mention of cooking all the rice, she rushed outside at once, brushing her mother-in-law's scolding aside. As for whether her brother-in-law was possessed by a ghost, let him be. If this new kind side stuck, she hoped he'd stay possessed every single day. The simple-minded Zhao Quan trotted out and whispered, Mother, shouldn't we save some rice for third brother to recover his strength? Not a single grain will be saved, Zhao Mu said firmly. He watched Liang Chun carefully tipping rice grains into the pot, then strode forward, grabbed the entire rice sack, and poured every last grain inside into the boiling water. Ah! The whole family cried out in unison, hearts aching at the sight. That was 3 caddies of rice. Stretched thin with their usual miserly way, it would have fed them for days. How could he dump every bit into the pot all at once? Son Lianji seethed, ready to unleash a stream of rebukes, yet she could not bring herself to snap at her son. Instead, she pointed an angry finger at Liang Chun, about to blame her for fumbling the sack. Zhao Mu quickly stepped between them. Mother, don't take this out on sister-in-law. I poured all the rice myself. Why blame her? Liang Chun had braced herself for a scolding, and her shock deepened as she stared at Zhao Mu. He was defending her now? Once, he'd loved nothing more than watching his mother berate her, even stoking arguments between them for fun. Zhao Mu did not linger to talk with his sister-in-law. He hurried over to support his trembling mother, too furious to speak, and led her back into the room. He knew his mother was not cruel at heart. Her friction with Liang Chun stemmed from the age-old bitter dynamic between mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law, a cycle entrenched by all the outdated rules of their ancient world. Zhao Mu had heard his mother ramble countless times about her own harsh treatment upon marrying into the Zhao household. Her mother-in-law, Zhao Mu's grandmother, had beaten and yelled at her at every turn. Even after being struck during the day, she was forced to wash the old woman's feet at night. Mid-wash, if her mother-in-law's mood soured, she would kick her without mercy. Son Lianji had no choice but to endure it silently. After a lifetime swallowing her own grievances, she had unwittingly passed that harsh treatment down to her daughter-in-law. Still, she was far gentler than her own mother-in-law. She only yelled, never raised a hand to strike Liang Chun. Zhao Mu hated this cycle of cruelty. So he sat his mother down and reasoned with her at length, begging her to be less harsh toward his sister-in-law. Outside the door, Liang Chun listened to every word. Overcome with gratitude to the point of dropping to her knees, she prayed silently. Whoever the spirit, ghost, or deity clinging to my brother-in-law, please stay with him forever. Once the rice finished cooking, the family shared their first bowl of thick congee in nearly a decade. In years past, with Zhao Mu's father bringing home game, the household should have survived. But Zhao Mu's endless reckless misdeeds forced the family to sell their belongings to pay compensation for his mistakes. Bit by bit, their savings dried up, and they slipped deeper into poverty. At first, they could afford plain brown rice. Then all they had was watery rice broth 3 times a day. Eventually, only 2 sparse servings a day remained. 2 days prior, Zhao Mu had given away what little grain they had left, leaving the cupboards completely bare. For days now, adults and children alike ate only once every 2 days. Tucking into thick, hearty congee for the first time in ages, every family member scraped their bowls clean as if to lick them spotless, needing no washing afterward. They scraped the cooking pot over and over to gather every last grain stuck to its sides. Zhao Mu could not bear to watch any longer and warned them not to scrape through. That night, Zhao Mu curled up under his thin straw quilt. In this era of widespread poverty, cotton was prohibitively expensive, so nearly all available cotton was stuffed into winter jackets. Quilts were filled mostly with straw and reed fluff, offering barely any warmth. Though they had a heated earthen Kong, firewood had to be traded for rice, so they rarely lit the stove. Zhao Mu was luckier than most. His quilt held a small amount of cotton stuffing. His parents, elder brother and sister-in-law, all slept fully clothed to retain what little heat they could. Lying on the Kong, Zhao Mu forced his mind to wander to distract himself from the bitter cold. First, he planned out his hunt, then thought of his unique system ability. He quickly summoned the glowing system interface floating before his eyes. He had not noticed before. His system was called the Daily Flash Sale. Did that mean a top-tier item could be purchased for a single copper coin each day? Unfortunately, the goods were assigned at random. If he could pick, he would buy tons of rice. Even if daily flash sales were limited, he wished the system ran a permanent marketplace. He could borrow massive silver loans from wealthy townsfolk and drain the marketplace of its supplies. He could even buy a cannon tank. No one would dare demand repayment after that. Of course, that was merely a silly fantasy. With his terrible reputation, no one would lend him grain. If he wanted his family to survive and earn a steady income, hunting remained his most viable option for now. Lost in thoughts of his mountain hunt, Zhao Mu drifted off to sleep. He woke at dawn the next day, frozen stiff. Unable to stand the chill any longer, he pulled on his clothes, resolved to head up the mountain as soon as possible. Just then, another glowing system panel popped open before him. Today's 1 copper flash sale item restocked. Snowfield thermal suit. Joy flooded Zhao Mu at the sight of the suit. He had been fretting nonstop over the freezing winter weather in the northern hills. Trekking up the mountain exposed to biting wind would leave him numb with cold, too frozen to hunt. The system had solved his worry in an instant. Excited as he was, he did not summon the suit right away. Its modern design would arouse too many questions if seen at home. He would put it on only after reaching the mountain. He swung his legs over the edge of the Kong and stood, only for his knees to buckle. His wounds had not fully healed, and last night's single thin bowl of congee left him weak and drained, devoid of any real strength. Only his fierce determination kept him from collapsing. Zhao Mu gritted his teeth, pushed open the front door, and stepped outside. The homestead lay silent. No one else had risen yet. It was not laziness. Staying still slowed the body's energy consumption, staving off hunger for as long as possible. The entire village shared this quiet desolation. Few homes had smoke curling from their stoves. Winter had driven food prices sky high, and grain was scarce. Unless a household held substantial savings or needed strength for heavy labor, most skipped breakfast entirely. One could judge the state of the dynasty by how its common folk starved. This nation was clearly teetering on its final years. Zhao Mu told no one of his plan. If his parents learned of it, they would fuss endlessly over his unhealed wounds and bar him from leaving, especially his mother, who would dissolve into hysterical tears. He followed the village trail toward the rear mountain. The hamlet was named Azure Dragon Village, after Azure Dragon Ridge that loomed behind it, a mountain range stretching 20 li long. The ridge brimmed with wild game, medicinal herbs, and mountain treasures, yet retrieving them demanded skill most villagers lacked. Common townsfolk could barely identify edible wild greens, let alone valuable roots. As for hunting, one had to master trap making, archery, animal tracking, and understand every creature's habits, a steep, complicated learning curve. Curiously, imperial rulers never banned bows and arrows. The reason was simple. Mastering archery took years of rigorous practice, out of reach for most commoners. As Zhao Mu reached the ridge, he spotted several women digging for wild vegetable roots. The bitter roots could be boiled into congee to fill empty bellies, flavorless yet better than nothing. They chatted idly as they worked, turning to stare when Zhao Mu approached. He smiled and greeted them. "Aunties, are you digging?" Before he finished speaking, every woman shot him a scathing glare and turned away, refusing to acknowledge him. Zhao Mu burned with embarrassment, well aware of his rotten reputation in the village. He had no choice but to press onward up the mountain. To hide his gun from prying eyes, he slung his father's old bow and arrows over his shoulder as a disguise. The women spotted the bow across his back and whispered, "That worthless boy plans to hunt up the mountain. Dream on. He'd miss even a steaming pile of dog shit if he tried." He attacked the Lee family girl and got beaten. How's he still walking around? Evil men live long. That's how. A rotten soul like his can't die easy. My heart aches for old man Zhao and his wife, two kind people. How did they raise such a wicked son? Who can say? But is he really climbing that ridge alone? Won't something terrible happen to him? What do you mean? I heard old Zhang from the village say a crazed wild boar's been rampaging through the small bamboo grove on Azure Dragon Ridge. I heard the same. It's attacked several hunters. Hunting parties from nearby villages tried to corner it, and all left badly injured. He'd better stay far clear of that grove. His scrawny frame would get gored to shreds. Though the women loathed Zhao Mu, they held no genuine wish for him to die. Their harsh words were spoken loud enough for him to hear, a quiet warning to steer clear. Unbeknownst to them, their words only stoked Zhao Mu's excitement. Wild boars were notoriously deadly game, as the old hunter's saying went. 1 boar, 2 bears, 3 tigers. Adult boars bore thick, tough hides ordinary arrows could not pierce, and even a shallow wound would not slow them down. A single full-speed charge spelled certain death for any unarmed hunter, but those rules only applied to ordinary hunters. Zhao Mu carried a firearm. Hunting the boar in his current weakened state was undeniably risky, yet the promise of meat overwhelmed all caution. If he brought down a single boar, his family would have enough meat to last the entire winter. It would also avenge his father, whose ribs had been shattered by a boar's charge years prior. If he accomplished what even his skilled hunter father could not, his family's opinion of him would shift entirely overnight. As for suspicious gossip from the villagers, let them talk. People explained evil men turning good as a miracle of repentance, and no one questioned the cause of such redemption. They only rejoiced at the change. "Where are you hiding, my big boar friend?" Zhao Mu muttered softly as he trekked uphill, clutching his gun tight. "Come out, and let me show you something special." His mind swam with vivid images. Glistening braised pork dripping with rich sauce, pork and green onion dumplings bursting with savory juice with every bite, sweet and sour pork ribs strung with sticky caramelized sugar. His stomach gurgled loudly. He forced the tempting food visions away. Hunger gnawed at him worse than ever. The higher he climbed, the fiercer the cold wind blew, leaving him shivering uncontrollably with a constant stream of nasal discharge. Though trees lined the trail, they offered no windbreak this winter. All leaves had fallen, and most dry branches had been scavenged or chopped for firewood, leaving bare, spindly trunks exposed to the bitter gales. The forest would have sheltered travelers in summer, but not now. Only imperial bans prevented villagers from felling full-grown timber, or every tree on the ridge would have vanished long ago. Shivering too violently to press on, Zhao Mu ducked behind a thick mature tree and summoned the snowfield thermal suit from his system space at once. A full white one-piece uniform materialized in his hands. The fabric felt soft and surprisingly thin, nothing like the bulky down jackets he remembered from his past life, even the high-end 2,000 or 3,000 silver ones he had once owned. This material felt unlike anything he had touched before. Zhao Mu pulled the suit on in a rush, tightening the attached hood snugly over his head. The uniform came complete with a built-in face mask and goggles. Only after fully suiting up did he grasp true warmth and comfort. Thin as the fabric looked, it sealed out every trace of frigid wind, leaving him almost overheated beneath its layers, without any bulky padding to hinder his movement. He drew his father's bow to test his range of motion. Every gesture was completely unimpeded. Zhao Mu finally understood the vast divide between poverty and wealth. No longer crippled by cold, he marched cheerfully deeper into the mountains, heading straight for the small bamboo grove the villagers had warned him about. He had already summoned his AK-47, holding it securely against his chest, ready to unload a full clip at the first sign of the wild boar. When he reached the bamboo grove, all he found was a ground crisscrossed with massive boar hoof prints. Trampled broken vegetation, dried dark blood splatters across the earth, and scattered broken arrows littered everywhere. Countless hunters had clashed with the beast here, and the tracks suggested the confrontation had happened quite some time earlier. No fresh wild boar hoof prints could be seen anywhere. Had the boar not come back? Or had it been hunted down? Zhao Mu scoured the surrounding area. He found no signs that the boar had been killed. Instead, he spotted a trail of messy, blood-stained hoof prints winding deep into Green Dragon Ridge. The boar must have fled wounded. Zhao Mu glanced toward the heart of Green Dragon Ridge. The mountains there rose steep and jagged, strewn with loose stones and thick fallen leaves, surely riddled with hidden sinkholes. One wrong step, and disaster would strike. Even with a gun, Zhao Mu dared not venture in for the time being. His body was far too weak to endure the grueling climb. Just walking to the small bamboo grove had left his whole body aching with exhaustion. But then again, the boar had escaped, and there were no other game animals nearby. Was he doomed to return empty-handed? A bitter weight settled in Zhao Mu's chest, and his once high spirits faded into despair. Suddenly, a hoarse cry echoed from afar, something halfway between a donkey's bray and a sheep's bleat. Zhao Mu narrowed his eyes to look. In the distance stood a roe deer beside the bamboo grove, scraping at the ground as if searching for food. Roe deer loved tender twigs and fresh shoots above all else. When starving, They would even gnaw on dry, withered grass buried under the soil. For this reason, their meat was exceptionally tender, with far less rank gamey odor than other wild animals, and packed high in protein. With no pork to be had, it made a fine catch. Truly, roe deer earned their reputation for foolishness. It could clearly see Zhao Mu standing there. Any other beast would have bolted without a second thought. Yet it continued rooting for food, oblivious. Without hesitation, Zhao Mu raised his gun and pulled the trigger at the deer. 3 deafening blasts rang out in quick succession. Flame erupted from the muzzle as spinning bullets tore forward. They struck the deer square in the head, blowing its skull clean apart. His aim had been true, but the bullet carried far too much power. Thankfully, it was only a roe deer. If it had been a pheasant, the bird would have been reduced to nothing but flying shreds of meat. He would have to stick to hunting larger game from now on, he thought. Zhao Mu quickly stowed his gun, stepped forward, and pulled 2 arrows from his pouch to drive them deep into the deer's carcass. If anyone asked about its shattered head, he could claim he'd smashed it afterward to make sure the beast was truly dead. After covering up the bullet wound, he pulled out the rope he'd brought, tied the roe deer securely, and slung it over his shoulders to head down the mountain. When he neared the foot of the slope, Zhao Mu ducked into a secluded spot to change into his tattered rags, then shuffled shivering downhill. His trembling stemmed half from the bitter cold, half from sheer weariness. Meanwhile, every member of the Zhao household had risen for the day. Sun Lianji rushed at once to check on her youngest, beloved son. Finding his bed empty, she'd assumed he'd gone to the outhouse. When she called his name out in the yard and received no reply, panic seized her. She hastily told Zhao Quan and Liang Chun to search the house top to bottom. The couple combed every corner of the home and yard, yet found no trace of him. As Sun Lianji fretted over where her boy might have gone, Liang Chun whispered uneasily. Could the third boy still be set on seeing Xiao again, unable to let go? Zhao Quan's face darkened. It's more than possible. Third brother has never gotten overly Xiao. He's probably gone to apologize, hoping to patch things up. Sun Lianji's heart twisted with anxiety and anger. Foolish boy. The Li family clearly set out to swindle him, yet he runs over to beg forgiveness. What if they beat him again? The 3 stood there, frantic and at a loss for what to do. Then old man Zhao stepped outside, one hand pressed to his aching chest, the other clutching a firewood hatchet. His face stony as he strode toward the gate. Come, we're going to the Li household. Husband, your body can't take this strain. I'm fine. Let's go. A cold, menacing glint filled old man Zhao's eyes as he marched forward with the hatchet. Zhao Quan hurried after him, fearing trouble, and Sun Lianji trailed close behind. When they reached the Li family's courtyard gate, old man Zhao rapped the wood with his hatchet. A woman's shrill voice called from inside. Who's there? Li family, this is Zhao Dezhu. Is my son Zhao Mu at your home? Old man Zhao demanded in a heavy, gruff tone. The words sent a sharp jolt through his injured torso, and he coughed violently, his brows drawn tight in agony. The gate creaked open with a clatter, and a long-faced woman stepped out. Sharp-tongued and venomous, she launched straight into a tirade. Are your lot out of your minds? Why come rummaging our house for your son? This isn't a mass grave. We've no reason to harbor that boy of yours. How dare you speak such rubbish? Sun Lianji snapped, furious. Zhao Quan seethed too, thick veins bulging on his forehead. The woman's words implied his brother belonged in an unmarked grave. Chang Yu shot Sun Lianji a sneering sideways glance and drawled sarcastically. That little beast you raised is nothing but trouble. Get off my land before you sully our doorstep. Folks will think we're mixed up with your wretched family. Sun Lianji ground her teeth. We have ties. Our children were formally betrothed. At this, Chang Yu spotted a crowd of neighbors gathering to watch the commotion and raised her voice to a piercing shriek. Have some shame. My Xiao is beautiful, gentle, and virtuous. Suitors queue all the way to the county town begging for her hand. What of your Zhao Mu? A thief and a layabout. Nothing but a village thug. How could a good girl like mine ever be promised to trash like him? But your family accepted our betrothal gifts and cartloads of grain. Sun Lianji tried to defend herself. Chang Yu curled her lip in contempt. Where's your proof? Even if you have any, you threw those goods at us begging for our favor. We never asked for a thing. Her shameless attitude infuriated Sun Lianji beyond words. She pointed a trembling finger at Chang Yu, unable to utter a single retort. Watching his mother's rage boil over, Zhao Quan rolled up his sleeves, ready to throw a punch. Chang Yu stood unafraid, jutting her neck out as if daring him to strike. She feared no fight. Her household housed 3 strapping grown sons ready to back her. The surrounding villagers merely watched on, none stepping in to calm the argument. After all, Zhao Mu had crossed nearly every household in the village at one point or another. Zhao Dezhu drew a deep breath, clamping a hand down on his eldest son's shoulder to rein in his fury. I will ask one last time. Is Zhao Mu here? He's not. And tell that good-for-nothing wastrel to stay far from our home. Anyone who associates with him will only meet misfortune. Chang Yu spat on the ground and moved to slam the gate shut. Just then, a confused voice called out from the distance. Father, mother, what's going on here? Everyone from the Zhao household and the onlooking villagers turned to the sound. Chang Yu continued her sneering taunt. Well, look who's back. No doubt he's been pestering some young girl again. Her words died in her throat, her mouth falling open in stunned shock, her face flushing crimson. Zhao Mu was walking toward them, a full roe deer slung across his shoulders. Zhao Mu stared blankly at the gathered crowd, while they stared back in stunned disbelief. Where had the boy gotten a roe deer? Real meat, fresh meat. In these lean times, folks dared not even fill their bellies with breakfast. Midday and evening meals amounted to thin bowls of coarse grain porridge. Save for the village head's well-off household and the pedantic scholarly Wen Yuan, all other families tasted meat barely a handful of times each year. This roe deer, though headless, would still yield roughly 30 jin of pure meat once bones were removed. 30 whole jin of meat. The villagers' breathing grew heavy, their eyes burning with naked envy as they stared at Zhao Mu. Son Lianji rushed straight to her youngest son, barely glancing at the deer as worry clouded her eyes. Third boy, where have you been? I couldn't sleep from hunger, so I headed up the mountain to hunt. Caught this roe deer. Mother, what's all this commotion about? Zhao Mu eyed the huddled crowd suspiciously. The moment son Lianji heard he'd gone hunting, all other worries fled her mind. She circled him frantically, patting him down for injuries. Your wounds haven't fully healed. How could you climb the mountain to hunt? Are you hurt anywhere? Let mother look you over. Zhao Mu sighed helplessly, about to say he was unharmed, when Zhao Dezhu stepped forward and murmured, Enough. Let's head home at once. All right. Zhao Mu followed his father toward their house. Zhao Quan hesitated, wanting to take the deer off his brother's shoulders, yet daring not to touch it. He knew full well his younger brother had never once succeeded at hunting before and suspected the deer had been stolen. Though roe deer were not livestock to be pilfered, he had no doubt Zhao Mu was capable of trickery and theft to get what he wanted. Zhao Dezhu harbored the same suspicion, which was why he was eager to hurry home. Otherwise, he would have paraded his son and the game through the whole village to show off. Just as they prepared to leave, Chang Yu, equally ravenous at the sight of the venison, let out a shrill yell. Stop right there. Zhao Mu, where did you steal that roe deer? The crowd's expressions shifted instantly. Their envy faded as they recalled Zhao Mu's usual rogue antics, and doubt spread across every face. Panic surged through Zhao Dezhu. His worst fear had come true. He fixed his youngest son with a sharp gaze, silently begging for an explanation. Zhao Mu glared sharply at Chang Yu, indignant. You accuse me of stealing without a shred of proof? Go steal a roe deer yourself if you're so capable. This is wild game, not domestic livestock. Chang Yu was struck speechless, stammering for a moment before regaining her wits. She stared at Zhao Mu in shock. Once, he'd treated her with deference, enduring her scoldings and endless menial chores without a word of protest. Now he dared to talk back to her in front of the whole village? Reading her stunned expression, Zhao Mu let out a cold laugh. What's wrong? Your daughter refused to marry me, and you refused to return my betrothal grain and gifts. We all know how shameless your family is. Do you still expect me to run errands for you like your son-in-law? Where are your menfolk? Too busy to work, saving their strength to breed livestock instead. A ripple of laughter rippled through the onlookers at his cutting retort. The boy had a vicious tongue. Chang Yu flew into a towering rage, screaming shrilly. You insolent brat! How dare you speak to me like that? Oh, you seem to enjoy hearing it. So shall I repeat myself? Zhao Mu scoffed. The villagers roared with laughter. Country folk were all the same. Kin or neighbor, no one passed up a good show. The Li family could not bear the humiliation. The three Li brothers, who normally minded their own business, stormed out of the yard shouting threats. Burly as young oxen, they brandished sickles and kitchen knives, snarling at the Zhao family from the gate. Zhao Mu, you little whelp, what did you just say? You're asking for a beating. Believe us, we'll thrash you again. Son Lianji froze in terror. Her beloved son could not withstand another brutal beating. Zhao Dezhu gripped his hatchet and stepped forward, broken by racking coughs. Zhao Quan frantically tugged his parents and brother back. Father, mother, third brother, let's drop this and go home. Zhao Mu stared down the three furiously brothers, vivid flashbacks of their brutal beatings and humiliating taunts flashing through his mind. Rage ignited in his chest. He tossed the roe deer unceremoniously into his elder brother's arms, snatched the hatchet from his father's grasp, and strode forward with blazing eyes, roaring, "You three scum! Come on then, if you've got the guts. I'll fight you all to the death today. If I die, none of you will walk away unscathed. Taking 3 of you with me is more than enough." The sudden ferocity in Zhao Mu, paired with the roe deer blood staining his clothes, struck terror into the onlookers. The Li brothers, who'd stooped to sending their sister to swindle Zhao Mu out of money, were cowards at heart. At the sight of Zhao Mu ready to fight to the death, their menacing snarls vanished. Unease flickered across their faces, and they edged backward several steps. Chang Yu was equally terrified, falling silent mid-tirade. She feared Zhao Mu truly would attack. He held a blade in his hands. If he sliced one of her sons, even a non-fatal wound could leave them crippled and unfit to marry. She hastily herded her 3 sons back inside and slammed the courtyard gate shut. Only then did she dare shout abuse through the wood. "Zhao clan, every last one of you is a worthless thug, a bandit." Zhao Mu spat scornfully toward the Li household's gate, then turned back to his stunned family. "Enough of this. Let's go home and eat meat. I'm starving half to death." Zhao Daju studied his youngest son for a long, heavy moment, then clapped Zhao Quan on the shoulder. "Home we go?" Zhao Quan stood dumbfounded, still staring at his brother. Zhao Mu jabbed him lightly with the hatchet's handle, jolting him back to reality. He quickly hefted the roe deer carcass and followed the others home. The villagers lingered behind, chattering endlessly, gossiping about Zhao Mu's new hunting skill, and the ugly falling out with the Li family. Everyone knew how pathetically he'd fawned over Li Xiuxiu not long ago. Back at the Zhao homestead, Liang Chun and her son waited anxiously. She'd feared Zhao Mu would run back to grovel before Xiuxiu once more, recklessly giving away the family's goods and enduring beatings just to see her. Such a shameful reputation would tarnish the whole household and ruin her own son's chances of marriage someday. Lost in her anxious thoughts, she looked up to see the entire family returning, Zhao Mu among them. Tears welled in Liang Chun's eyes. He really did go to the Li household, didn't he? Zhao Mu was utterly exasperated. Let them think whatever they pleased. He was worn out beyond words. "I'm heading to my room to rest. Clean the roe deer and stew some meat for dinner." "Roe deer?" Liang Chun's tears dried as she spotted the deer slung over her husband's shoulders, her eyes widening in shock. Where did this come from? Zhao Quan's expression twisted with conflicting emotions. "Third brother hunted it up the mountain." "What?" Liang Chun stared, about to press for more answers, yet shot a wary glance at her mother-in-law standing nearby. Son Lianji shot her an unamused glare and volunteered an explanation. "We questioned him on the way back. It definitely wasn't stolen." Liang Chun did not trust her mother-in-law, who spoiled her younger son relentlessly. Zhao Dezhu spoke slowly to calm her doubts. "Roe deer are wild game. No one keeps them as livestock. Besides, our own arrows are stuck in its body." To Liang Chun, her father-in-law was a reasonable man. Unlike other village toughs who refused to admit wrongdoing, he always apologized to wronged families whenever Zhao Mu misbehaved, even offering compensation. His words eased her worries, yet left her thoroughly confused. Had her brother-in-law truly been possessed by some spirit? Yesterday he'd acted unrecognizably polite, and today he'd hunted game and actually caught it. "What are you standing around gawking for?" Son Lianji called out, brimming with newfound pride. "My son brought home meat. Hurry and prepare it." Liang Chun snapped out of her daze and rushed to boil water, ready to skin and dehair the roe deer. With old man Zhao's guidance as an experienced hunter, they finished dressing the carcass by midday. After discarding the inedible hide, bones, and offal, they were left with 23 full gene of pure venison, more than 20 gene of meat. Food would no longer be scarce for the family. Even lean roe deer meat fetched 40 to 50 copper coins a gene in this season. If they sold all of it in town to buy millet grain, they would get 60 to 70 gene of grain in return. Liang Chun happily sorted the meat, daydreaming about traveling to the county seat that afternoon to trade it for grain. Zhao Mu rested in his bedroom, growing restless when no savory meat stew scent drifted through the house. He stepped outside to find the family packing the dressed venison into a burlap sack. "What are you doing?" Zhao Mu frowned. Son Lianji smiled gently. "Your elder brother will take this meat to town later to exchange it all for grain. Trade all of it away? That won't do." Zhao Mu shook his head firmly. "Set half aside to stew for lunch. Take the rest to town for grain." His words froze the whole family in place. Stew meat? Though they'd dreamed of tasting meat, they'd only ever hoped for thin bone broth. A full meat stew felt far too extravagant a luxury. Knowing the game belonged to Zhao Mu, Liang Chun forced a nervous smile to reason with him. Third brother, we barely have any grain left. We ought to. Zhao Mu flatly rejected their plan. He understood their frugal, thrifty mindset, yet with fresh game in hand, there was no need to scrape by so ruthlessly. I know we're short on grain, which is why half goes to trade for millet. The rest we must eat. How will we keep our strength otherwise? I'm heading back up the mountain to hunt tomorrow. Do you expect me to hunt on an empty stomach? First and foremost, the whole family needed to replenish their emaciated bodies, especially his young nephew, the scrawny little boy hovering beside the deer bones, swallowing hard at the mere thought of meat. If the child went without nourishment much longer, his years would be numbered. Liang Chun thought such reckless spending was no way to run a household. Zhao Quan looked torn and conflicted. Son Lianji's heart filled with dread at the thought of her son climbing the mountain to hunt again. Only Zhao Dezhu stared at Zhao Mu as if gazing at a complete stranger. A heavy silence hung over the family for a long moment. Zhao Dezhu spoke first, his voice low and laced with a cold edge. Third boy, do you even remember your grandfather's name? Zhao Dazhuang. Zhao Mu rolled his eyes. Father, I'm not possessed, nor have I lost my wits. All I want is to live a decent, peaceful life. Liang Chun muttered softly under her breath. If you truly want a good life, we ought to trade meat for grain. Seeing reasoning with them was pointless, Zhao Mu let out a helpless sigh and dropped all pretense of civility. Let me make this clear. If any of you stop me from eating meat, I'll take whatever grain we trade back and give it all away to strangers. Mark my words. The entire family was instantly stricken with fright. At the same time, they realized this was the Zhao Mu they knew, threatening his own kin at every turn. The reformed, docile version of him they'd seen earlier had been far more terrifying. Zhao Dezhu relented, forcing a bitter smile. We'll do as third boy says. Keep half the meat to stew for ourselves, and take the rest to town to exchange for grain. Liang Chun's heart ached at the thought, yet she had no choice. Her father-in-law had spoken. She dared not argue further. Otherwise, her mother-in-law would fly into a rage. In this household, the matriarch held elders' authority in the highest regard. Even Zhao Quan, the eldest son, never dared contradict the older generation. Only Zhao Mu had the gall. Thanks to his outburst, the whole family would get to eat meat today. Since they were stewing meat, they might as well fill their bellies before heading into town. Liang Chun set a pot over the fire and poured in water. She was about to toss the raw meat straight in without blanching it, when Zhao Mu hurried over and shooed her aside to take over the work himself. He had no intention of eating meat reeking of raw gaminess and unpleasant odors. He blanched the meat and skimmed off all the bloody scum floating on the surface. Liang Chun's heart twinged with agony, watching him waste good broth like that. Surely such recklessness would bring divine retribution. Son Lianji stared on in shock. Son, why pour out perfectly good meat broth? That's not broth. I'm drawing out all the grime and foul flavors trapped in the meat, Zhao Mu explained. Zhao Quan tugged the corner of his mouth. Third boy, that's plain meat stock. Where on earth did you learn to cook such a wasteful way anyway? I picked it up in town, asking chefs for tips when I dined out there once. Zhao Mu lied without hesitation. The whole family nodded in sudden understanding. Zhao Mu used to roam the streets constantly, carousing with ruffians and drinking and feasting in town. It stood to reason he'd crossed paths with a few restaurant cooks. Only city chefs would cook with such extravagant methods. Liang Chun seethed inwardly. What was a farmer boy like him thinking, aping the fancy lifestyles of townsfolk? Still, recalling how aimlessly he'd wasted his days before, she supposed this new habit wasn't entirely out of character. Even Zhao Dezhu relaxed a little at this explanation. As he prepared the meat, Zhao Mu watched everyone's reactions closely. He noticed that when he acted domineering and unreasonable, they all relaxed far more easily. He heaved a long, weary sigh. Truly, prejudice in men's hearts is an unshakable mountain. It would take plenty of time to wear away. Zhao Mu grumbled silently to himself, then turned to grab seasonings, only to pause mid-step and call out, Sister-in-law, bring me the condiments. Coming. Liang Chun hurried over, carefully carrying an earthen jar that held barely a pinch of salt left at the bottom. The large block of salt inside was clearly contraband private salt. Dealing in unlicensed salt was illegal, but the villagers scraped by on so little they had no choice but to ignore the law. As for other spices, there were none to be found at all. Even cooking oil was reduced to a tiny dreg at the bottom of its bottle. The whole family winced in distress as Zhao Mu poured generous dollops of oil and handfuls of salt into the pot. Yet once the rich aroma of stewed meat wafted through the air, none of them could utter a word of complaint. They only swallowed mouthfuls of saliva greedily. An irresistible savory scent billowed from the thick meat broth, and the courtyard echoed with the sound of constant swallowing. The neighboring families suffered terribly from the temptation. They cursed under their breaths. They'd just finished lunch, thin congee watered down with wild greens, barely enough to take the edge off their hunger. The meat fragrance stirred their ravenous appetites anew, their stomachs rumbling nonstop. They craved the smell, yet could not bear to step away. Meat was such a rare luxury back then, and everyone's sense of smell was sharp as a knife. The aroma drifted across the entire village, leaving nowhere to escape its torment. Inside the Zhao family courtyard, Zhao Xiaoshan, the nephew, hid behind his father, staring longingly at the pot of meat. Unable to contain his craving any longer, he whispered timidly, "Father, there's so much meat. Can I have a few pieces?" "2 pieces, please." Zhao Quan said nothing. Xiaomu had always been selfish. If he refused to share, the rest of the family would count themselves lucky just to sip a little broth. Liang Chun overheard their exchange and felt sorry for her son. She stole a glance at her mother-in-law, who watched Zhao Mu with a soft smile, then at her father-in-law, who pretended indifference yet kept his eyes fixed firmly on the stew pot. She steeled her resolve. Let her get scolded, so be it. She grabbed a stack of small bowls and walked over to Zhao Mu, forcing a bold tone. "Uncle, give Xiaoshan half a bowl of meat to eat." Son Lianji, sitting by the doorway, froze, her face falling. She was about to reprimand Liang Chun, but the sight of her young grandson gazing yearningly at the pot silenced her harsh words. Zhao Mu sighed, glanced at the undersized bowls in her hands, took them, and set them far off to one side. Liang Chun's face fell visibly, her eyes dulling with crushing disappointment. Of course, he'd never intended to let her family taste any meat. Then Zhao Mu casually picked up a large bowl and filled it to the brim with meat. "Sister-in-law, take this to Xiaoshan. We don't have any flatbread left, so meat's all we've got to fill our bellies." Liang Chun stood dumbfounded. She could not believe he'd given her son such a generous portion of meat, let alone that he planned for everyone to eat their fill of meat. Even wealthy landowners would never dare squander food like this in these hard times. Zhao Mu paid no mind to their shock. He ladled a full large bowl of meat for every member of the household. Once all portions were served, he watched his family squat in the courtyard, poised to dig in yet waiting for his signal, all eyes fixed on him. He knew it was not respect or politeness holding them back, but fear of his reckless, unruly temper. Only when Zhao Mu lowered his head to eat did they tentatively pick up chopsticks and take their first bites of meat. Zhao Mu had cooked the meat in the style of braised pork belly. Though short on seasonings and using game deer meat instead of pork, drawing on the cooking skills he'd learned years ago at New Oriental Cooking School in his past life, he managed to recreate the rich, savory essence of classic braised pork. The tender, melt-in-your-mouth chunks burst with intense savory flavor the second they touched their tongues. The soft texture, juicy meat, and thick, delicious sauce flooded their taste buds. A rush of delight that made their heads spin. It was unbelievably delicious. After the first mouthful, the Zhao family abandoned all thought and hungrily tucked into their bowls. Zhao Xiaoshan's cheeks flushed with color after finishing his full bowl. He drained every drop of broth and stared longingly at the remaining meat in the pot, yet dared not beg for more. He'd known from childhood that working adults ate first, grandfather and father, then grandmother and mother. As for third uncle, he was always out drinking, feasting on meat and carousing, never sparing a thought for the family at home. Zhao Mu ate quickly too. While the meat was far from perfect, it at least filled his empty stomach. Once he finished, he refilled everyone's bowls once more. He held back from giving Xiaoshan a second full serving, though. The boy suffered from chronic malnutrition, and gorging on too much meat all at once would make him sick. One bowl was his limit, more than enough calories for a child his age. Instead, Zhao Mu pulled out a large marrow bone simmering in the broth and handed it to Xiaoshan to gnaw on. Xiaoshan made no complaints, clutching the big bone happily and gnawing away. Growing up in the north in his previous life, this was how adults fed young children. Every Lunar New Year, after stewing and smoking meat, they'd set aside marrow bones, smoke them alongside the rest, and let kids chew them for fun. By the end of the meal, everyone was thoroughly satisfied. They clutched their full bellies, leaning lazily against door frames, under windows, and across the courtyard, soaking up the warm sun. They'd nearly forgotten how long it had been since they'd tasted meat, let alone such an abundant feast. Watching his family's contented faces, Zhao Mu could not help but smile. He owed them more than he could ever repay, and he was determined to make amends. Their happy grins were all he wanted to see now. "Third boy, come here," Zhao Dezhu suddenly called out. Zhao Mu hurried over. "Father, what is it?" You mean you plan to hunt in the mountains again tomorrow? Zhao Dezhu asked. Aye. We have no grain left, and this little meat won't last long. I want to try my luck in the hills. Zhao Mu now owned a gun, so he feared no beast he might encounter there. His only worry was failing to spot any game at all. Zhao Dezhu stared at his third son, whose temperament had shifted drastically, his gaze heavy with a mix of relief and unease. If the beating he'd endured had finally opened his eyes to right and wrong, it was a blessing. Yet he feared the injury might have damaged his mind, leaving unseen internal wounds. He'd seen the same transformation among comrades on the battlefield. Many men returned home utterly changed after bloody combat. Once cheerful men turned silent and withdrawn, while quiet souls suddenly lost all sense of shame. In the end, countless of them took their own lives in the dead of night. As the veteran soldiers put it, their spirits were too weak to withstand the killing aura of battle, their 3 souls and 7 spirits thrown out of balance. A person's 3 souls and 7 spirits governed reason and emotion. Damage to them warped one's entire disposition. Testing whether someone's spirits were fractured was simple. Watch how sharp their mind remained. Those with broken spirits could not absorb advice or learn new things, growing slow-witted and muddled. If you truly want to learn hunting, I'll teach you the mountain's unwritten rules and all my hunting tricks, so you won't stumble blindly through the woods and get hurt. Zhao Dezhu forced a gentle smile, hoping to test his son's clarity of mind. Zhao Mu was overjoyed. He knew his father was a renowned hunter for miles around, with decades of invaluable experience. At her father-in-law's words, Liang Chun nudged Zhao Quan, signaling him to listen in as well. Zhao Quan huffed and turned back to sunbathe. He'd grown up surrounded by his father's hunting lessons. If he'd had the talent for it, he would have become a hunter long ago instead of a farmer. Liang Chun seethed at her husband's foolish, simple-minded stubbornness. That was precisely why her parents-in-law favored her quick-witted brother-in-law so much. Son Lianji, for her part, secretly wished Zhao Mu would abandon hunting entirely. The mountains were far too dangerous. Yet neither man paid her any heed. Father explaining and son listening intently as they lost themselves in the lesson. None of it meant for him. Before a cup of tea had cooled, he'd nodded off completely. Liang Chun had intended to eavesdrop and later pass the knowledge on to her son, yet she too soon grew drowsy. The couple leaned against one another and fell fast asleep beneath the window. Son Lianji rolled her eyes in exasperation and woke them, sending the pair to town to trade meat for grain. They fled like prisoners pardoned, relieved to escape the lecture. That night, they returned with grain. Crop failures had driven grain prices sky-high, yet meat had inflated even more steeply. If the slow-witted Zhao Quan had gone alone, he would have accepted whatever meager grain the merchants offered without a word of protest. Fortunately, Liang Chun had accompanied him. Though she was thrifty and petty by nature, every penny she haggled over was for her family's survival. She'd worn her cheeks raw bargaining shamelessly and managed to barter for an extra 10 caddies of grain. All told, they brought home 80 caddies of millet. Coarse, unpolished grain it might be, yet it would feed the household for a good while. They arrived home after dark. Liang Chun barely had time to rejoice before Zhao Mu ordered her to cook thick congee and bake flatbreads. Everyone must eat their fill. 6 family members to eat their fill plus bake bread. A single meal would devour 3 to 5 caddies of grain, a luxury no household could afford. Liang Chun shot a desperate glance at her husband, then cursed herself for looking to such a blockhead for help, turning instead to her parents-in-law. Zhao Dezhu hesitated and tried to reason with him. Third boy, there's no need to waste so much grain. Oh, so we're not allowed to eat? Zhao Mu threw a tantrum at once. Fine, if none of you want it, I'll give all the grain away to strangers then. We'll eat it. Start cooking right this instant. Liang Chun jolted and rushed to the kitchen without delay. The whole family united as one in an instant. They had no doubt the reckless boy would truly give their grain away if denied. Once more, the whole family feasted to their heart's content. Some stewed meat remained from noon, and they stuffed pieces between flatbreads, grease dripping down their chins, sipping thick congee between bites. To them, even emperors could not enjoy a finer meal. Full of conflicting pangs of guilt and pure bliss, they finished eating and retreated to their separate rooms. Old man Zhao had made a decent life for himself after returning from military service, single-handedly building 3 connected cottages. Unlike other families, where 9 people crammed onto one shared bed under a single quilt, each small household here had their own space. Zhao Quan's family of 3 returned to their room. Liang Chun sighed emotionally. This has been the most comfortable day I've had since marrying into your family. Zhao Quan said nothing, glancing at his son who'd gorged himself and fallen fast asleep. Chun, I think I've overeaten and my stomach's heavy. Zhao Quan coughed softly. Liang Chun shot him an amused glare. Look at you, so easily satisfied. Though I ate plenty too. I could rub your stomach for you. That's not what I meant. How about we move around a little to aid digestion? Zhao Quan whispered with a lecherous grin. Liang Chun caught his meaning instantly, her cheeks blazing red as she shot him another flirtatious glance full of coquetry. Without a word, she climbed onto the brick Kong, undressed, and slipped under the quilt. Keep your voice down later. Right away. Zhao Quan stripped off his clothes in a flurry and climbed atop her. The three cottages stood side by side. Zhao Quan's on the left, Zhao Daiju and Sun Lianji's in the middle, and Zhao Mu's on the right. The young couple tried their best to stay quiet, but the rammed earth walls carried every sound straight to the elder pair's ears. Zhao Daiju shifted awkwardly on his bed. Sun Lianji chided with a laugh. The moment their bellies are full, all they think about is that nonsense. What a pair of worthless creatures. Enough of that. Don't you want another grandson? Zhao Daiju hushed her sharply. I was just thinking our third boy ought to find a wife soon. Sun Lianji fretted. Zhao Daiju fell silent for a long moment before answering gently. Our third boy wears his heart on his sleeve, loves far too deeply when he falls for someone. He needs a girl from a good, steady family worthy of his wholehearted devotion, otherwise he'll only end up hurt. Zhao Mu, overhearing every word through the dividing wall, tugged the corner of his mouth in a bitter smirk. His father really had seen the world, wrapping criticism in such roundabout words. He might as well have said plainly that Zhao Mu was a lovesick fool who poured all his heart into women only to lose everything in the end. Yet Sun Lianji missed the underlying reproach entirely, nodding earnestly. You're right. We need a docile girl he can keep under his thumb. Zhao Mu fell silent, defeated. Let's get some sleep, Zhao Daiju sighed, lying down and instantly drifting off into heavy snoring. His wife's simple-mindedness was truly unmatched. The young couple continued their private business next door, the elder pair fast asleep in the middle cottage. Meanwhile, Zhao Mu pulled on his thick, cold-weather snowsuit. The chill bit deep, and only bundled up could he think clearly. He was the one who dragged this family into hardship, so it fell to him to restore their former stability and build an even better life for them all. To lift his loved ones out of poverty, he would start with their basic necessities: clothing, food, shelter, travel. For clothes, he needed to secure at least 2 new cotton-padded winter coats for every family member. It was only early winter now, and snow would bring far harsher cold in the months ahead. Worse, the unseasonable chill made him suspect they were entering a little ice age. Warm winter layers were non-negotiable. Without them, people would freeze to death. He tallied the current market prices in his head. 2 thick cotton coats per person for the whole household, enough to withstand freezing temperatures, would cost nearly 2 taels of silver. And prices would climb higher as the weather worsened. That explained why commoners clung to tattered old coats for years, new for 3 winters, worn for 3 more, patched and mended for another 3. They dared not waste cotton on thick quilts either, and frostbite deaths were commonplace in the coldest months. Silver was the crux of every problem. 2 taels equaled 2,000 copper coins. Most farmers could not save that much after an entire year of backbreaking labor. If they spent such a sum solely on winter coats, the whole village would condemn them as spoiled and delicate. Can't you endure the cold a little longer? They'd sneer. But Zhao Mu knew they could not endure it. He jotted the figure mentally. 2 taels for basic cotton winter wear. Pork now sold for 45 copper coins per caddy, prices having surged wildly. Millet stood at 15 copper coins a caddy, also skyrocketing, driven up by greedy grain merchants hoarding stock to inflate prices. Refined white rice and wheat flour cost even more. Feeding the household decent meals would run roughly 200 copper coins each day, a staggering sum for ordinary farmers, most of whom thought 20 coins a day for food extravagant. Translated to modern standards, it was like spending 200 yuan daily on groceries, a heavy burden for any laborer. Even this was not enough in Zhao Mu's eyes. Annual food costs alone would hit 8 taels of silver. Then there was shelter. A proper home with blue brick tile roofing and a private courtyard would set him back 50 to 80 taels. And that was using only standard building materials. Finer timber and craftsmanship would cost far more. The most troublesome expense of daily life, food, clothing, shelter, and transport, was travel. Out in the countryside, buying a mule cart was the best option. Mules could plow the fields and trot along the roads, with incredible stamina to boot. Yet a single mule cart cost roughly 20 to 30 taels of silver, sometimes even more. All things added up, he needed to earn 120 taels quickly if his family were to live comfortably. 120 taels. If Zhao Mu spoke of this goal aloud, In an era where the average peasant earned less than one tael per year, everyone would laugh him to scorn. Even Zhao Dezhu, his father, would not hesitate to press a blade to his throat and roar, "I don't care who you are. Get out of my son's body this instant." After Zhao Mu finished his calculations, he wiped away the charcoal scribbles on the ground, etching his target firmly into his mind. He dared to dream such a lofty goal only thanks to his secret cheat system. Now he simply waited for midnight to arrive, curious what valuable item he might snap up at a one when flash sale next. The hours ticked by, and he drifted off to sleep while waiting. When he woke the next morning, Zhao Mu rushed to open the glowing system panel. Today's one when flash sale item, electronic fish attractor. Electronic fish attractor. When submerged, it automatically releases special scents, light, and sound signals to draw schools of fish. Zhao Mu broke into a grin. At the foot of Azure Dragon Ridge ran the Batong River, its name meaning thoroughly connected waterways, a reference to its long, winding tributaries that spread far and wide. The river teemed with fish of all kinds. The trouble was winter had set in. Most fish had swum downstream to warmer southern waters, while the rest hid deep beneath the surface, refusing to rise. Even seasoned veteran fishermen struggled to catch or hook a single fish this time of year. This electronic fish attractor changed everything. The ignorant fish of ancient times had never laid eyes on such futuristic technology. They'd fall for it instantly. It was a shame he didn't have electrofishing gear, though. That device wreaked terrible havoc on aquatic ecosystems, akin to draining a pond to catch all its fish. Even if he owned one, he'd never dare use it. It was like the difference between hunting with a bow and setting the whole mountain ablaze. The latter would destroy livelihoods for generations to come. Now that he had the gadget, the only problem was acquiring the one when required to purchase it. His mother had given him 2 copper cash earlier, which he'd already spent entirely. Zhao Mu steeled his resolve to beg money from his father. He pushed open the door and spotted his father resting, creeping over to whisper, "Father, do you have any money on you?" Zhao Dezhu had actually been awake for ages, choosing to lie still to conserve strength and speed his recovery. Zhao Mu's question jolted him wide awake. His son had pulled this trick countless times before, begging for money at dawn to carouse with local layabouts, treating them to feasts, and squandering the family's savings just to play the generous fool. Those idlers called him Brother Mu to his face, yet snickered at his stupidity behind his back. He'd thought his son had turned over a new leaf after hunting up the mountain yesterday, only for him to come begging for cash again. He sighed heavily. "I've only half a qian of silver left. That's our family's last reserve, set aside for emergencies. That's more than enough." Zhao Mu's eyes lit up. "I'll earn every bit of it back for you by nightfall." Zhao Dezhu trembled violently, staring wide-eyed at his son, voice shaking. "Since when did you pick up the vice of gambling?" "It's not gambling. I plan to go fishing," Zhao Mu explained. "Why do you need money to fish?" Zhao Mu was caught off guard by the question. Thinking fast, he hastily made up an excuse. "Fishing requires a net, and we don't own one. I'll have to pay someone to borrow theirs." The logic sounded reasonable, yet Zhao Dezhu remained skeptical. Next door, Liang Chun had also woken early, overhearing the hushed conversation through the wall. She nudged her husband Zhao Quan. "Hey, third son's begging father for money. I told you a leopard can't change its spots." Zhao Quan had heard every word too, seething with irritation. He'd thought his younger brother had mended his ways yesterday, bringing home game to fill the family bellies. How could he revert to his old tricks overnight? Liang Chun urged him. "Go next door and stop father from giving him money, or it'll all go to waste." "How am I supposed to talk him out of it? Mother will scream my head off." Zhao Quan shook his head repeatedly. At the mention of their mother-in-law, Liang Chun lost her nerve, yet still fumed at Zhao Mu's foolishness. "You're her son too. Why does third son get whatever he wants? Didn't you hear father say that's all the savings we have? If anyone in this household falls ill, we'll need that silver for medicinal herbs. What if third son gambles it all away?" Liang Chun shoved Zhao Quan relentlessly. Zhao Quan rolled over, turning his back to his wife and grumbling. "Third son says he's going fishing, not gambling. You believe him?" Liang Chun let out a cold scoff. Zhao Quan fell silent. He didn't trust his brother either, yet it was his own father and sibling. One begged for money, the other was willing to give. What could he possibly do? Their voices stayed low, so the family next door heard nothing. Zhao Dezhu stared at Zhao Mu with a pained, reluctant expression, unwilling to hand over the silver. He feared he could not answer to his eldest son's family if the money was wasted. Son Lianji doted on her youngest boy, rummaging around the corner while they spoke. At last, she unearthed the scrap of hidden silver and pressed it into Zhao Mu's palm at once. "Go fishing, son. Fishing is safe. No danger will befall you." In the old woman's eyes, fishing was far less perilous than trekking up the mountains to hunt. Zhao Dezhu watched his reckless wife hand over their last funds, shaking with rage and breaking into a coughing fit, as if his wounds flared up again. Catching sight of his father's furious glare, Zhao Mu dared not linger, fearing he might leap up and beat him. Once he fled the house, Zhao Dezhu sank back onto the bed with a long, bitter sigh, overcome with despair. He'd thought his son had changed for the better just yesterday, only for him to revert to his old self today. These extreme swings of fortune were too much to bear. Next door, Liang Chun's eyes reddened with anger upon hearing the silver had been taken. Zhao Xiaoshan stirred awake in a daze and called out, "Mother, when will we eat? Eat, eat. All you ever think about is food. We have no money left. What do you expect to eat?" Liang Chun snapped at him. Even scolding her son, she spoke in a hushed tone, terrified her mother-in-law would overhear and accuse her of sarcasm, unleashing another torrent of abuse. Gazing at her timid young son, her husband pretending to sleep to avoid conflict, the shrewish mother-in-law next door, and their miserable straitened circumstances, Liang Chun's tears finally spilled forth like a river. How wretched my fate is. Meanwhile, Zhao Mu clutched the scrap of silver and asked the system if it could exchange small change. The system instantly converted half a qian of silver into 50 copper cash, then deducted 1 cash to complete his purchase of the electronic fish attractor. Elated, Zhao Mu hurried to find Li Dajiang, the village's elderly veteran fisherman, who owned a boat and fishing nets. Winter meant no fish could be caught, so Li Dajiang stayed indoors mending his nets instead of heading out to the river. Zhao Mu entered his courtyard politely. "Uncle Li, mending your nets?" Li Dajiang looked up in suspicion. Recognizing Zhao Mu, he darted a glance at the chickens, ducks, and dried fish hanging in his yard to confirm nothing had been stolen. Knowing the boy was far too clumsy to pilfer anything anyway, he stepped forward to block the gate. "Speak your piece from here." Zhao Mu's heart sank, stung by how terrible his reputation had become. He wasn't even allowed to cross another man's threshold. Pushing his resentment aside, he forced a smile. "I'd like to borrow your fishing boat and nets to catch fish." "Absolutely not. Be off with you." Li Dajiang refused outright. He would never lend his livelihood tools to this wastrel. What if he damaged them or sold them off? How would he survive then? Zhao Mu had expected rejection and only asked as a last resort. He promptly pulled out 15 copper cash he'd prepared in advance. "Forget borrowing. Would you rent them to me? 15 cash for 1 day. Rent?" At the word and the sight of the coins, Li Dajiang perked up immediately. Truth be told, he still hated the idea of renting his gear to Zhao Mu. Yet the cash sat right before his eyes, 15 whole copper cash. Winter meant even if he sailed out, he'd catch nothing. The boat and nets sat idle anyway. Extra rent money was a welcome bonus. Tempted, he still hesitated to agree. "Zhao Mu, it's not that I'm unwilling, but this boat and nets are my livelihood. 20 cash, my final offer. If you won't rent, I'll head to the neighboring village to borrow gear instead," Zhao Mu stated firmly. He wasn't certain he could rent equipment elsewhere, but the threat worked the same as pretending to walk away mid-haggle over clothing. It stirred hesitation in the seller's heart, especially with a higher price on the table. Sure enough, Li Dajiang wasted no time conceding. "Very well, I'll rent you the boat, but full fishing nets are tricky to handle. I can't give you those, though I'll rent you a hand landing net." "Deal." Zhao Mu knew full well he lacked the skill to operate a full fishing net, and even if he hauled in a full catch, he couldn't lift it aboard alone. A landing net would suffice. 30 to 40 jin of fish would be more than enough. Ordinary fish sold for roughly 5 cash per jin. 30 jin would net him over 100 cash. Seeing Zhao Mu agree, Li Dajiang fetched oars and the landing net from his house. They exchanged the cash for the gear on the spot. Zhao Mu strode off happily with his fishing tools slung over his shoulder. Once he left, Li Dajiang's wife Wang Hui rushed out of the house after him. "Husband, what did you hand over the oars and landing net for?" "That rascal Zhao Mu's going fishing," Li Dajiang replied casually. "What? You lent him your boat and landing net?" Wang Hui flew into a panic. "Have you lost your wits? What sort of person is Zhao Mu, and you dare lend him your gear? If he breaks them or sells them off, how will we get by? I'm going after him to take them back this instant." Li Dajiang blocked his wife and held up the 20 cash. He paid rent for them and promised compensation if anything breaks. At the sight of the coins, Wang Hui slowed her steps, eyes filled with doubt. 20 cash just to rent a boat? This feels fishy. Wang Hui's expression softened. "That's true enough, but fishing this time of year? Will he catch anything?" Li Dajiang scoffed in contempt. "Catch nothing at all. Even I return empty-handed. What chance does he stand?" That wastrel's just throwing money down the drain, though we'll profit all the same. Wang Hui nodded in agreement. Let Zhao Mu waste his money. Their household gained income regardless. Zhao Daju's such a decent soul, and their eldest boy Zhao Quan is honest and hardworking too. How did their third son turn out such a good-for-nothing? When he comes home empty-handed tonight, don't pity him, and don't give our family grain to his household. Wang Hui chided as she muttered her complaints. Li Dajiang shot her a sharp glance. Do I look foolish enough to sympathize with that lout? Good to hear. I'm heading back inside to rest. Moving about stirs up hunger this cold season, Wang Hui said, walking back into the house. Though their home stocked dried fish and grain, winter was a harsh stretch. They needed to budget every scrap of food to last until the autumn harvest, or they would not survive the cold months. With boat and landing net rented, Zhao Mu hurried straight to the Batong River. The water had not yet frozen over, yet its current bit with bitter, bone-chilling cold. No one dared step foot in the water. Even standing close sent shivers through one's body. Lingering by the river for long would bring on illness. A fall into the frigid current would almost certainly cost him half his life. Zhao Mu found the small skiff Li Dajiang had moored along the bank, a crude tiny craft locals called a punt, propelled by 2 oars or a bamboo pole. It was used solely for casting nets and setting shrimp traps on the water. It could barely fit 2 people, leaving no room to move. He climbed aboard and secured the oars. In his past life, he'd often rowed boats with his family in city parks. Though clumsy, he managed to push the skiff away from the shore. He could not fish from the riverbank for 2 reasons. The mud along the edge was too thick to stand on. He also feared the electronic attractor would fail to work properly in shallow shore water. He rowed to the middle of the river, letting the skiff drift peacefully. Luckily, there was no wind that day. Glancing left and right to confirm no onlookers, Zhao Mu summoned the electronic fish attractor from his system storage. It was a square box fitted with indicator lights and small vents designed to release scent and sound, with a rope fastened to its top. He tied the rope firmly to the boat's hull, flipped the device's switch, and tossed it into the river. Once finished, he lay back on the skiff to conserve his energy, knowing the fish would not arrive instantly. Fish struggled to find food in winter just as humans did. So the moment the attractor hit the water, the starving fish swarmed toward its alluring signals. Zhao Mu was the first person in this ancient world to wield such advanced fishing technology. The fish had evolved no natural defense against its lures. He had barely settled down when loud splashing echoed beneath the boat. Leaning over to peer into the water, he gasped in surprise. 4 or 5 carps had already swum over, each weighing 2 to 3 jin, wriggling excitedly in circles around the box, desperate to squeeze inside for food. Thrilled, Zhao Mu grabbed his landing net and dipped it into the water. The ravenous fish were utterly oblivious to danger. They only realized they were trapped once the net closed around them, thrashing wildly in a futile bid to escape. Zhao Mu hauled every carp aboard one netful at a time. No sooner had he pulled up one school than another charged toward the attractor as if summoned. Carps, catfish, snakehead, yellow catfish, grass carp, fish of all sizes surrounded the device. The largest grass carp weighed a full 10 jin, while the tiny yellow catfish barely tipped the scales at under 1 jin. Their small stature natural to the species rather than juvenile fish. Zhao Mu carefully avoided young fry, targeting only fully grown mature fish. Midway through his haul, he spotted a yellow-cheeked carp, known locally as the water tiger, and nearly jumped for joy. Water tigers, or yellow-cheeked carps, were fierce predatory fish that could grow 2 meters long and weigh over 100 jin at maximum size, feeding exclusively on smaller river fish. This specimen stretched nearly 1 meter, its tiny round eyes blazing, jaws wide enough to swallow an entire small carp in one gulp. Zhao Mu left it unmolested for the time being, letting it feast on smaller fish swimming nearby while he scooped up the rest of the catch. He drifted on the river for half a day straight, hauling nearly 200 jin of fish and sweating profusely from exhaustion. The sun hung high overhead, time to return home for a meal. Glancing at the massive yellow-cheeked carp still circling the attractor, he knew he could not haul such a giant aboard alone. He moored the skiff to the bank, hid all his catch securely, then sprinted home to fetch help. He primarily needed his elder brother, whose superior strength could pull the giant fish from the water. Zhao Mu burst breathlessly back to his family's cottage. Liang Chun stood over the stove preparing thin congee, tossing wild vegetables she'd stored into the pot to stretch the meager meal. Elder sister-in-law? Where's brother? Her sudden cry startled Liang Chun so badly, she dropped her handful of wild greens straight into the boiling pot. She'd planned to use only half the vegetables, and her heart ached at the waste. Yet seeing Zhao Mu's frantic, urgent demeanor, she trembled with anxiety. You, what trouble have you landed in now? Zhao Mu rolled his eyes and shouted into the courtyard. Brother, eldest brother, come out quick. Zhao Quan rushed outside in a panic. What's wrong? What's happened? Zhao Dezhu and son Lianji hobbled out as well, confused by the commotion. Hurry, grab burlap sacks, and follow me to the river, Zhao Mu urged. I've caught 200 jin of fish, plus a giant water tiger I can't lift alone. Come help me haul it aboard. Oh, and elder sister-in-law too. The catch is far too heavy to carry back on our own. Hurry, or thieves will steal all the fish before we return. With that, Zhao Mu turned and sprinted back toward the river in a rush. The entire family stood frozen, staring at one another in disbelief. Fishing? 200 jin? He might as well claim he'd carried the whole river home single-handedly. Skeptical as he was, Zhao Quan followed after him to see for himself. Son Lianji trusted her youngest son above all others and snapped at Liang Chun. Are your ears plugged? She cut herself short, recalling her son's plea to avoid fighting, and forced a gentler tone. Hurry and go lend a hand. But mother, the kanji's still simmering on the stove, Liang Chun protested. I'll watch the pot. Son Lianji immediately stepped over to tend the fire. Reluctantly, Liang Chun set down her cooking utensils and hurried outside after the men. Zhao Xiaoshan's eyes lit up at the mention of fish. The three arrived at the riverbank utterly stunned. Piles of fresh fish lay wriggling atop the mud shore. Zhao Mu stood aboard the skiff, waving them over anxiously. Brother, come quick. Oh, okay. Zhao Quan dragged his stunned gaze away from the mountain of fish and climbed onto the boat. Once aboard, Zhao Mu rowed back toward the river's center to retrieve the giant yellow-cheeked carp, while Liang Chun frantically unrolled her burlap sacks to start packing the catch. The more fish she stuffed into the bags, the more shocked she grew, tears streaming down her cheeks without pause. Zhao Xiaoshan helped beside her, clinging tightly to a large carp even as its tail slapped his face repeatedly, refusing to let go. Once they finally stuffed the fish in his sacks, he glanced up to see his mother crying and wiped her cheeks with his sleeve. Mother, why are you crying? Liang Chun wept softly. It's nothing, Xiaoshan. Mother isn't sad. I'm crying for joy. So many fish. Our family will survive this winter after all. Zhao Xiaoshan was still young and utterly ignorant of the ways of the world. He let out an "oh" and set to work with renewed vigor. Meanwhile, the two brothers rowed their boat out onto the water. Drawn by the call of the electronic fish attractor, the yellow-cheeked carp, known locally as the water tiger, emerged once more. Sure enough, they spotted a 1-meter-long fish thrashing wildly below the surface. Wild with joy, Zhao Quan snatched up the landing net and slipped it over the giant fish in one swift motion. He'd trapped it, all right, but hauling it aboard proved far easier said than done. The water tiger was massive and possessed incredible strength. It thrashed frantically. It nearly yanked Zhao Quan straight into the river. The landing net's handle was far too short. Zhao Mu couldn't reach the pole, so he wrapped both arms tightly around his elder brother's waist and pulled with all his might. Veins bulged all over both men's bodies, their faces turning beet red. After tussling with the water tiger for the time it takes to brew a cup of tea, they finally hauled it splashing out of the water. Once free of the river, the fish twisted and flailed even more violently. Zhao Quan roared, pouring every ounce of strength into one heavy heave. He slammed the heavy fish hard down onto the boat deck. A deafening clang echoed across the water. The small craft rocked violently from side to side. Ignoring everything else, Zhao Quan threw himself atop the fish and locked it in a fierce bear hug. San, row for shore at once. Zhao Mu bent his back to the oars, speeding the boat swiftly back to the riverbank. Liang Chun had already fetched a hefty stone, her eyes blazing with determination. In a display of courage matching any man's, she shouted, "Husband, step aside." Zhao Quan glanced up just in time and rolled out of the way. Crash! The stone smashed square into the fish's skull. The water tiger went completely still, motionless. Zhao Mu stared at his sister-in-law in stunned surprise. He'd never imagined this woman, usually bullied relentlessly by her mother-in-law, could turn so ferocious at the sight of food. Zhao Quan stared at the inert giant fish, then turned to look at his wife, who stood gasping for breath, stone still clutched in hand, eyes fixed unblinkingly on their catch. He scratched his head nervously. Wife? It stopped moving. Liang Chun snapped out of her trance. Ugh, my arms ache something terrible. Zhao Quan fell silent, lost for words. Zhao Mu likewise stood speechless. Neither brother dared utter another word, and they quietly set about loading the fish into sacks. By the time all the fish were stowed, every one of the four looked like mud-caked monkeys. None of them paid the slightest mind to their filthy state. While the other three were distracted, Xiaomu slipped the electronic fish attractor discreetly into his spatial storage. The four trundled homeward, giddy with excitement, sacks slung over their shoulders. They'd originally planned to bag the water tiger as well, but Zhao Quan refused outright. Instead, he hoisted the giant carp onto one shoulder and stumbled along the path home, unsteady under its weight. On the walk back, Zhao Xiaoshan darted circles around the adults, bubbling with delight. Unable to contain his curiosity any longer, he whispered to Liang Chun, "Mother, can I eat some of these fish?" Liang Chun did not know how to answer and shot a sideways glance at Zhao Mu. All the fish had been caught by Zhao Mu. He alone got to decide how they were shared. Judging by his old temperament, he would almost certainly have given 2/3 of the catch to Li Xiuxiu's family. But he was nothing like the man he'd once been, so perhaps the fish would stay with them this time. "Mother, why won't you answer me?" Zhao Xiaoshan pressed, voice soft but insistent. He had always been a sensible boy, never throwing tantrums or complaining. Even when they'd gone hungry before, he'd endured the empty stomach in quiet silence. But after tasting meat once yesterday, he developed a fierce craving for rich food. Faced with mountains of fresh fish, he simply could not hold back his longing. Irritated by his pestering, Liang Chun snapped, "Don't ask me, I don't know." Scolded, Zhao Xiaoshan fell silent, too afraid to press the matter further. Watching the boy's crestfallen face, Zhao Mu smiled and waved him over. "Xiaoshan, come here." Instead of drawing near, the child shrank back, hiding behind his mother's legs. His third uncle had always terrified him. Once, Zhao Mu had forced him to steal his own mother's belongings, threatening to beat him half to death if he refused. Zhao Xiaoshan was utterly frightened. Zhao Mu knew full well all the cruel, underhanded things he'd done in the past. Embarrassed, yet determined to mend his bond with his young nephew, he tempted the boy gently. "Xiaoshan, if you come over and call me third uncle, I'll bring you fish to eat every single day from now on." Zhao Xiaoshan's eyes lit up, and he asked timidly, "Oh really? Would I lie to you?" Zhao Mu countered, "Right. Third uncle never breaks his word. Before, every time you said you'd beat me, even when grandfather tried to shield me, you always found a way to hit me anyway." Zhao Xiaoshan nodded, convinced his uncle always kept his threats and his promises alike. Zhao Mu's embarrassment deepened tenfold. Liang Chun rolled her eyes. "Well, since you know I won't lie, why don't you call me?" Zhao Mu urged, forcing a confident grin. Zhao Xiaoshan glanced between his mother and father. Seeing no sign of opposition, he mumbled softly, "Third uncle." "I." Zhao Mu broke into a wide smile and waved a hand grandly, brimming with confidence. "From now on, you'll feast on fish and meat every day, so much you'll grow sick of it." Zhao Mu and the others trundled along with their fish sacks toward the village. As they reached the outskirts, they crossed paths with several villagers out gathering wild vegetables. When the villagers spotted their bulging sacks and the enormous fish slung over Zhao Quan's shoulder, they stared in shock. One after another, they asked where they'd gotten such a massive haul of fish. Zhao Quan replied proudly that his youngest brother had caught them all from the river. The villagers turned to gawk at Zhao Mu in undisguised disbelief, and the attention made his cheeks flush hot. It was just fish, surely their shock was overblown. Each face looked as though they'd seen a ghost. But then he thought of his own reckless, useless behavior in days past, and understood their surprise. It was only natural they'd be stunned to see him suddenly taking care of his family. Eager to let the whole village witness his youngest brother's dramatic change of heart, Zhao Quan paraded slowly around the hamlet with the giant fish balanced on his shoulder, wandering as if lost. Halfway through the village, they ran into Li Dajiang, a local fisherman. At the sight of the water tiger, Li Dajiang's jaw dropped. Though the sacks were tied shut, decades spent fishing had trained his eye. He could tell they were stuffed full of fish at a glance. Rather than ask where the catch came from, Li Dajiang's face paled with alarm. He sprinted straight for the riverbank. No one could haul in so many fish this time of year. A terrible fear seized him. Had that rascal Zhao Mu sold his boat to buy all these fish? Gasping for breath, he skidded to the river's edge, only to find his boat securely tied. The boat was unharmed and intact. He triple-checked. It was unquestionably his vessel, no cracks or damage, still damp from the river water where it had floated. Which meant Zhao Mu had really caught all those fish single-handed. That was impossible. Could there be a hidden fish shoal nearby that the boy had stumbled upon by pure luck? It wasn't entirely out of the question. Once winter set in, almost no one fished the rivers, leaving schools of fish to multiply and gather in dense swarms. Li Dajiang's heart raced with greed. He bolted straight home to grab his fishing net. If Zhao Mu could pull such a huge catch with just a small landing net, his full casting net would surely yield far more. Worried he might not drag in the weight alone, he called his wife to come help him cast. He was determined to haul 300 to 500 jin of fish back home. As for whether Zhao Mu would return to fish the same stretch that afternoon, that was none of his concern. Only fish filling his own belly counted as true gain. Thankfully, he'd refused to lend Zhao Mu his net that morning, otherwise there would be nothing left for him to catch. Zhao Mu carried the giant water tiger home. Sun Lianji was overjoyed the moment she laid eyes on the haul. Our San has truly turned out well. I said it all along. He's been clever since he was a little boy. I must go speak to Aunt Chi at once. She laughed at me when I told her our San had woken up to his responsibilities. Let's see what she has to say now. Zhao Dezhu stood confused, watching Zhao Quan and his wife rush back and forth cleaning the fish. He called Zhao Mu to his side, his tone grave. San, did you catch all these fish yourself? I'd originally planned to head up the mountain, Zhao Mu replied with a smile. He was ready with the pre-planned lie. On my way past the river, I suddenly remembered you'd also shown me how to spot hidden fish shoals. I gave it a try, spotted a huge school straight away, and hurried to rent a fishing net. Though Zhao Dezhu made his living as a hunter, not a fisherman, he had waded into rivers to catch fish when game grew scarce in years past. Over time, he'd picked up a fair few fishing tricks. He simply could not believe that after one day's lesson, his son had stumbled onto such abundance. Doubt gnawed at him. Yet logic told him no lifelong fisherman could pull such a staggering load in one go without striking a massive fish shoal. Even half a chin of silver spent at dawn would never buy this much seafood. Could his youngest son be a natural genius at hunting and fishing? Zhao Dezhu stood dazed, utterly blindsided by this overwhelming stroke of good fortune. Zhao Mu paid no mind to his father's stunned state and set about slaughtering a 5-jin grass carp to stew for dinner. He was ravenous. Seeing his third uncle preparing fish, Zhao Xiaoshan hurried over to help curry favor. He was far too small for any heavy labor, so he fetched firewood instead. He toted a handful of sticks at a time, stacking them into the stove to boil water, huddled tiny and vulnerable on the dirt floor, yet utterly adorable. Zhao Mu pinched his soft little cheek. Eat your fill later, grow tall, and marry a beautiful wife someday. Thank you, third uncle. Zhao Xiaoshan nodded his small head vigorously. Children forgot slights easily. Even after countless beatings at Zhao Mu's hands, the promise of fish had completely won him over, before a single bite had even touched his lips. Liang Chun rolled her eyes at her son's shameless eagerness, yet her face lit up at the mountain of fish laid out before them. Excluding the giant water tiger, the remaining catch weighed roughly 160 jin once cleaned. Mostly common carp and grass carp, they would fetch around 3 qian of silver if sold. 3 whole qian, 3,000 copper coins. Enough grain to feed the family for months. As for the water tiger, as a rare predatory river fish, its value surpassed pork, selling for 60 to 70 copper coins per jin, with prices climbing even higher once winter arrived. This single 1-meter carp weighed 35 kilograms, or 70 jin. At 80 coins per jin, this one fish alone was worth nearly 6 qian of silver. If they rationed their supplies carefully, their earnings today would feed the family all winter, with no fear of starvation. Just then, Sun Lianji returned home, grinning proudly as she turned to Zhao Mu. San, Aunt Chi is asking for a crucian carp to simmer in soup for her daughter-in-law. Will you sell her one? Aunt Chi hovered awkwardly by the doorway, too embarrassed to step inside. Zhao Mu nodded with a warm smile. Mother, you may decide, no need to ask me. Sun Lianji's chest swelled with pride, bragging loudly. See, I told you our San is filial, he listens to everything I say. I'll sell her one then. Aunt Chi brightened instantly and showered him with clumsy praise. Truly, San is such a good boy, a fine boy. She could think of no more flattering words to offer. Her conscience would not let her spew overly effusive false compliments. Watching her mother-in-law sell a fish, Liang Chun grew inspired. Mother, what if we invite the villagers over to buy fish directly from us? She suggested, striking while the idea was fresh. It would save us the trip into town to sell them at market. Aunt Chi had already paid and left. Sun Lianji shot Liang Chun a sharp glare. Why ask me? These fish were caught by our San. Liang Chun had hesitated to bring the idea up to Zhao Mu directly, which was why she'd turned to her mother-in-law first. Now it seemed she had to consult the man who'd caught the fish after all, and she hesitated, unsure how to phrase her request. Zhao Mu thought hauling all the fish into town for sale was far too much trouble. Though prices might be slightly higher in the market, carting dozens of heavy jin of fish there would exhaust them completely, and the family could never bear the cost of renting a mule cart for transport. Go ahead, sister-in-law. You may arrange the sales, he told her. But we can't sell every last fish. This was the first time Liang Chun had seen Zhao Mu so agreeable, and she nodded quickly. Of course, of course. We'll set 2 aside for you, younger brother, to nourish your body and heal your old injuries. Zhao Mu shook his head helplessly. I have no wounds to mend. What I mean is, set 3 large fish aside to send to eldest sister. She's always helped our family out, yet her in-laws treat her with open contempt. This gift will restore a little of her dignity. 2 fish may not seem like much, but this is only the start. We'll send her more later. Set another 3 aside for your parents' home too. They've lent us grain countless times in our hour of need. Keep 3 more here, so father and Xiaoshan can eat well these next few days and regain their strength. Silence fell over the courtyard as everyone absorbed his arrangements. Zhao Mu met his family stunned, wide-eyed stares and massaged his temples with a headache. He realized changing their deeply ingrained mindsets would take far more than a single day. He resolved to stop over-explaining. He would simply prove his intentions through his actions. Though every member of the family struggled to accept how drastically Zhao Mu had changed, they followed his instructions regardless. First, they cleaned and prepared the fish reserved for their own use, then set about selling the surplus. The giant water tiger was sold to Li Wenyuan, the village's poor scholar. He planned to present it to his teacher, hoping to curry favor and secure a minor clerk position at the county magistrate's yamen. Zhao Mu declined to deliver the fish himself. He knew his terrible reputation. If he showed up bearing gifts, everyone would suspect he harbored some underhanded motive. The scholar might refuse the fish outright, or even shout insults and chase him away. Liang Chun would deliver the fish to her parents' home on her own. If the gift had been bulkier, Zhao Quan could have accompanied her, but 3 fish were too modest an offering to warrant a big commotion. Even so, when Zhao Quan and Liang Chun returned separately after dropping off the fish, their faces glowed with unbridled excitement. San, you'll never believe it, Zhao Quan rambled, gesturing wildly as he recounted the scene with their elder sister. When eldest sister heard you'd caught the fish and sent them over for her, she burst straight into tears. She said our San has finally woken up, that he's learned to care for his family at last. Zhao Quan repeated the story on loop, simple and slow-witted as he was, only able to describe how fiercely their sister had wept. Zhao Mu fell quiet for a moment, then asked softly, what did her in-laws say? Zhao Quan's glee faded instantly, his eyes dulling visibly. His crestfallen expression said everything. It was to be expected. All the support eldest sister had given their family over the years meant 3 fish could never erase the disdain her husband's family held for her. Sun Lianji and Zhao Dezhu, who had been glowing with joy only moments before, lost their smiles and sighed heavily. Sensing the heavy mood, Liang Chun hurried to lift their spirits. San, my parents were overjoyed to receive the fish. They said they'll invite you over for a proper feast soon. Zhao Mu doubted her parents' sincerity, yet he recognized she spoke only to comfort the family. He forced a gentle smile. Once I hunt wild boar or other game, we'll bring meat along to their house and mooch a meal off them. Wild boar? The whole household jumped in shock. Zhao Dezhu's voice turned sharp and stern as he snapped at him. San, don't grow arrogant just because you caught a roe deer and a load of fish. A fully grown wild boar on the mountain can overpower 3, even 5 seasoned hunters working together. I'm glad you've gained confidence and want to do honest work, but don't act recklessly. Hunting boar can get you killed, do you understand? Zhao Mu nodded. I know, father. I only spoke in jest. Zhao Quan and Liang Chun laughed, relieved. This bold, boastful streak was the Zhao Mu they remembered. Sun Lianji swatted his arm lightly, scolding him fondly. Silly boy, don't speak such frightening nonsense ever again. Only Zhao Dezhu remained solemn. He could tell his son had not been joking. He truly intended to hunt wild boar. Determined to dissuade him, Zhao Dezhu sent the rest of the family outside and pulled Zhao Mu into his private room. Zhao Mu followed, curious what his father wanted to discuss. Could it be the silver coins they'd earned that morning? They'd made 9,000 copper coins in total, all currently in Zhao Mu's keeping. He'd been turning over how to split the earnings fairly. He stepped inside and opened his mouth to speak, only to freeze as his father slowly unbuttoned the front of his tunic. A hideous, jagged scar stretched across his chest. The wound spanned a full foot long, slanting down from beneath his throat to beneath his left ribcage. The scar tissue was dark and raised, the old flesh pulled wide at the edges. Though fully healed, the mark alone painted a vivid picture of how close he'd come to death. Zhao Mu recoiled in shock, realizing what the scar must be. Father, was this from a wild boar? Zhao Dezhu said quietly. I never told you all, fearing you'd worry yourself sick. Now I can tell you the full story. He recounted the fateful day slowly. I headed up the mountain with a few fellow hunters, intending only to catch pheasants and roe deer. We never expected to stumble upon a lone wild boar. That beast measured 7 chi long, broad and heavy, weighing no less than 3 to 500 jin. We only wanted to flee, no thought of hunting it. But it spotted us and charged straight ahead. Do you know how fast a wild boar can run? It matches a fully grown horse's speed, even climbing steep mountain slopes. The other hunters stood further away and scrambled up trees to safety. I was too close to run more than 2 steps before it slammed into me. Just one blow, only one, and I couldn't stand. This massive gash split my chest open, and several ribs snapped clean through. If I hadn't reacted fast enough to drive an arrow into its eye, and the other hunters hadn't loosed a volley of arrows to draw it away, I would never have made it down. Hunters have a saying. On the mountain, rank danger as boar first, tiger second, bear third. That tells you how deadly wild boar truly are. Now do you understand how terrible hunting one would be? Zhao Mu's expression turned grave. In his past life, he had never seen a real wild boar, only distant images in zoos and on television. He had no idea how lethal they could be. He pictured the 7 chi long beast, charging at dozens of kilometers an hour, sharp tusks glinting. A single blow would kill a man instantly. His father had survived only from decades of hunting experience, rolling just enough to soften the impact. If it had been him instead, his bones would have been gnawed clean long before anyone found him. Cold sweat prickled Zhao Mu's back as he thought of his earlier reckless plan to track wild boar alone. Though he possessed a gun, he was still far too weak in his current state. If danger suddenly appeared, he would undoubtedly suffer losses. He instantly grasped why his father had urged him back inside the house, and quickly made a promise. Father, I understand. I won't recklessly go boar hunting. Won't recklessly. That meant he still planned to go sooner or later. Zhao Dezhu caught the hidden meaning behind his words and was about to berate him, but his agitation pulled at his unhealed wounds, sending him into a violent coughing fit. Seeing his father turn red and gasp for air mid-cough, Zhao Mu hastily relented. All right, I won't hunt wild boars at all. Calm yourself. Only after Zhao Dezhu heard this sincere vow did his temper settle slightly. A long while passed. Once the stabbing pain and his injuries faded, he spoke earnestly once more to warn his son. Third boy, it's not that father doubts you. Wild boars are creatures no ordinary man should ever provoke. If something terrible happens to you, your mother will grieve herself sick, and I won't live long either. The whole family will suffer ruin because of it. Father knows you're not rotten at heart. You wouldn't want to see this household torn apart, would you? Zhao Mu nodded repeatedly. You're right, father. I won't hunt wild boars. Yet as soon as the words left his mouth, a silent thought lingered in his mind. Once my marksmanship sharpens, that rule might not hold. Zhao Dezhu stared straight into his eyes and saw no trace of deception, finally relaxing. Next, they turned to sorting out how to split the day's earnings. Logically speaking, every copper coin came from the fish Zhao Mu had caught and sold. He could have kept it all for himself. But he knew full well how much trouble he'd dragged the family into these past few years. They were already penniless on his account. He wanted to make amends. Their discussion unearthed an awkward truth. The household still carried heavy debts. Zhao Mu's reckless mischief over the years had piled up endless trouble. Zhao Dezhu was a man of strict honor, so every time his son stirred up trouble, he'd pay compensation to wronged villagers. The family never had spare silver to cover these fines, forcing them to borrow time and again. On top of that, they'd handed over 5 taels of silver as the bride price for the Li girl. After tallying every loan, Zhao Dezhu told Zhao Mu their combined debts amounted to a staggering 10 taels of silver. Zhao Mu's head throbbed with worry. He'd thought selling the fish would at least lighten the family's burdens, yet the earnings wouldn't even cover half their outstanding loans. As father and son debated which creditors to repay first, a loud voice boomed from outside the gate. Uncle Zhao, are you home? Zhao Dezhu let out a bitter laugh. Great, it's one of our debtors come to collect. Who is it? Zhao Mu asked quickly. Big Zhu from the village. You stole his young piglet once, remember? It was a young sow valued at 2 qian of silver. I promised him 2 qian and 3 fun to settle it, so he wouldn't report you to the village authorities, Zhao Dezhu muttered quietly. Zhao Mu nodded and stepped outside at once. In the courtyard, Sun Lianji greeted a tall, dark-skinned man awkwardly. He was broad-shouldered with a thick beard and large, bell-like eyes that naturally looked fierce, yet right now he stood rigid and uneasy. Sun Lianji's warm hospitality flustered him terribly. Though he was the creditor, he fidgeted as if he'd come begging for money, repeating non-stop to Sun Lianji as she poured him water. Annie, No need to trouble yourself. Zhao Quan and Liang Chun stood nearby, well aware of his errand, busying themselves silently. No one wanted to acknowledge the tense scene. Debt collection at one's doorstep was mortifying for all parties. Liang Chun also seethed inwardly. They'd barely caught a break financially before having to hand money over again. Zhao Mu sized Big Zhu up and recognized him as an honest, straightforward man. He stepped forward politely. Brother Zhu, you've come. Big Zhu had tolerated son Lianji's pleasantries with restraint, but he had no patience left for Zhao Mu. He fixed him with a cold glare and refused to utter a word. Damn my useless past self, Zhao Mu thought with a pained smile. He pulled out a string of 1,000 copper coins and held them out. Brother Zhu, here's 1,000 when as partial repayment. Once I earn more silver, I'll settle the rest. Does that work? Big Zhu's eyes lit up at the sight of the money, yet he did not take it. He eyed Zhao Mu suspiciously. I heard you sold a great many fish today. This can't be all you earned. We did, but most of the silver went to repay the doctor's bills for father's medicine in town. You know he's still bedridden and injured. Rest assured, I won't drag my feet on repayment. I swear I'll pay every last one I owe you before this month ends. Zhao Mu spoke with unwavering sincerity and pressed the coins firmly into Big Zhu's palm. Big Zhu clutched the money, torn with hesitation. This debt has lingered far too long. Just one more month's grace, Brother Zhu. I give you my word I won't delay further. If I fail to pay by then, come take whatever you like from our home as compensation. Zhao Mu knew Big Zhu was too soft-hearted to press harsh demands, and his bold offer settled the matter. Sure enough, Big Zhu heaved a weary sigh. Very well. Pay me back as soon as you can. My own family will struggle through this winter too. I know, and I'm truly sorry for the trouble I've caused you. Zhao Mu apologized and walked him to the courtyard gate. Once Big Zhu left, Zhao Quan could not hold back his question. Third boy, we have money now, why not pay the full debt all at once? Zhao Mu smiled bitterly. If we hand over every copper coin we have, what will the whole family eat? Besides, I owe countless people money. Even all today's earnings wouldn't cover every debt. This way is better. Whenever a creditor calls, we pay a portion to calm them down first. I'll keep fishing and hunting to chip away at the rest bit by bit. Zhao Quan understood after hearing the explanation and fell silent. Liang Chun had initially scoffed at her husband's foolish, naive question, but Zhao Mu's words earned him new respect in her eyes. Her trust grew when he mentioned going fishing to clear the debts. She'd witnessed firsthand how skilled he'd been catching fish that morning. Perhaps they really could pay off all their loans and live a decent life at last. With a mountain of debts weighing on his mind, Zhao Mu wasted no time lingering. He filled a bowl with cooked fish, grabbed a stack of flatbreads, and ate heartily. Once full, he planned to head straight back to the river to catch more fish. Fishing brought in money far faster than hunting in the mountains. The whole family said nothing and dug into their meal without delay. Nothing mattered more than filling their empty bellies. After dinner, as Zhao Mu prepared to leave, young Zhao Xiaoshan worked up his courage to speak. Third uncle, can I come fishing with you? Zhao Mu had been hoping to grow closer to his nephew, and his request filled him with delight. Still, he thought of the river's dangers and gently ruffled the boy's hair. The riverbank is far too dangerous. I'd worry sick if you tagged along. Seeing a flicker of hope, Xiaoshan puffed out his scrawny chest and promised eagerly. I won't go near the water, I swear. I'll just stay on the bank to pick up any fish that wash ashore. The boy's persistence, paired with their newly mended bond, made Zhao Mu reluctant to refuse outright. He chuckled. Very well, but mark my words, you must stand far back on the shore, never step close to the river. If anything happens to you, I'd never be able to face the family again. TSK, don't speak such ill omens. Son Lianji swatted her grandson lightly, displeased. Liang Chun shot Zhao Quan a pointed glance, silently urging him to speak up. Taking her hint, Zhao Quan hesitated a moment before asking timidly, should I come along to help as well? No need, elder brother, Zhao Mu smiled. Head up the mountain to gather firewood instead. We've nearly run out at home. If trouble arises, I'll send Xiaoshan running back to fetch you. Zhao Quan nodded and fell quiet. Liang Chun seethed with frustration at her husband's stupidity. They'd earned a good sum that morning, yet he hadn't received a single copper for himself. Still, she'd eaten the fish Zhao Mu caught, so she could not openly complain. Now a chance to go fishing and earn extra silver had slipped away simply because her husband agreed without argument. Zhao Mu noticed his sister-in-law's sour mood and shook his head faintly. He pulled all his coins from his robes and held them out to her. Sister-in-law, I've spoken with father. You take this money. You manage all the household expenses day in and day out. So from now on, the family funds will stay in your care. Every member of the household except Zhao Daiju stared in shock at the pile of copper coins spread across the dining table. Liang Chun's lips trembled as she locked eyes with Zhao Mu. Me? I'm to hold the money. Zhao Mu nodded and pushed the coins toward her. Sister-in-law, you've labored endlessly running this home these past years. My foolish, reckless behavior brought endless shame down on you. I even stole much of your dowry, leaving you unable to hold your head high when visiting your birth family. This was all my fault, and I owe you amends. I've only just woken up to my wrongs and have little silver to give, so I entrust these earnings to you to manage our household. Even this pile will have to be split to repay our debts. But rest assured, I'll hunt and fish tirelessly to turn our fortunes around and make life easier for all of us. I only ask that you set aside your resentment toward father, mother, and elder brother. His heartfelt words shattered Liang Chun's composure, and she burst into loud, tearful sobs. As Zhao Mu had suspected, Liang Chun was a kind, virtuous woman, sensible, soft-hearted, and compassionate. Her tears were not spurred by the silver he'd handed her, but by the realization that all her lingering bitterness toward her in-laws had been petty and ungrateful. Zhao Mu had been young and prone to foolish missteps. Though her mother-in-law could be sharp-tongued, she never struck her, nor hoarded fine food away from her like other cruel mothers-in-law. Her father-in-law always treated her with gentle respect. Her husband, simple as he was, loved her dearly, and her son was obedient and well-behaved. She already lived with a kind family, yet she'd harbored petty resentment and judged them harshly in her heart. Guilt overwhelmed her. Zhao Mu was caught off guard by her emotional breakdown, awkwardly wondering how he'd made her cry. Father, mother, husband, younger brother, it is I who have been wrong, Liang Chun wept. A woman's duty is to tend the household. I failed to manage our home well and nursed ungrateful resentment toward all of you. I am truly sorry. Zhao Mu was stunned by her self-blame, shocked by how deeply the old feminine codes of conduct had taken root in her mind. The rest of the Zhao family's hearts ached for her, especially Sun Lianji. Though she'd always been domineering, she knew her daughter-in-law endured countless hardships in their home. Her sternness stemmed from fear that Liang Chun would flee or remarry to escape their poverty, so she'd kept a firm hand on her to prevent such thoughts from taking hold. Seeing Liang Chun weep bitterly and volunteer to apologize, Sun Lianji surprised everyone by raising her palm and striking Zhao Mu across the cheek. I spoiled you rotten all these years and let you grow into such a worthless fool. Now kneel and beg your sister-in-law's forgiveness at once. Zhao Mu shifted uncomfortably. Must he really kneel? Still, the old saying held true. An elder sister-in-law deserved the deference due a mother, so it was only fitting. He rose immediately to comply. Liang Chun wiped her tears and hurried to steady him. Third boy, we are family. No need for such formalities. So long as you truly turn over a new leaf, everything I do for this household is my duty. Enough. Zhao Daiju spoke up to smooth over the tense moment. Now that all grievances are laid bare, we can move forward. We're one family. No rift is unbridgeable. From today onward, we work as one to build a better life for all. Zhao Mu grinned. Father speaks the truth. Liang Chun nodded, still dabbing at her wet eyes. With their grievances out in the open, the whole household settled into far warmer harmony. Zhao Mu's reckless misdeeds were no longer a weight hanging over them all, and even Sun Lianji softened her sharp temper. Zhao Mu mused that if every day unfolded as smoothly as this one, their lives would steadily grow better and more prosperous. Just as peace settled over the family, a weary voice called from outside the gate. Zhao Mu, are you home? Zhao Mu wondered what Li Dajiang wanted and stepped outside. Li Dajiang stood soaked head to toe, as though he'd just climbed out of a river. Curiosity got the better of him. Uncle Li, the weather is freezing cold. Why were you bathing in the river? Li Dajiang was already simmering with anger, and the teasing question only irked him further. I fell into the Batong River. That's what? You went bathing in the river in this frigid weather? That would only make you colder. I said I slipped and fell in. Every member of the Zhao family turned their heads aside, struggling to hold back laughter. Zhao Mu's sharp wit was unmissable. No one in their right mind bathed in icy river water in the depths of winter. Villagers dared not even wash their hair for fear of catching a deadly chill. It was plain to all that Zhao Mu taunted him on purpose, sensing the man had come to pick a fight. Zhao Mu had resolved to stand his ground. If he let Li Dajiang slander him unopposed, word would spread, and every villager who remembered his past misdeeds would seize the chance to bully him. Li Dajiang shrank back a little under Zhao Mu's mocking half-smile, yet his wife's urgent warnings echoed in his mind. He forced himself to press his accusation. Did you poison the river water to catch fish? The Zhao family's faces darkened instantly. Though no village rule banned electric fishing, such tools simply did not exist in their time. Poisoning fish carried brutal punishment. Once branded a fish poisoner, Zhao Mu would never recover his reputation, no matter how thoroughly he cleared his name later. Li Dajiang's loud shouts carried to every neighboring courtyard. This was no mere petty squabble. He intended to ruin Zhao Mu's standing in the village entirely. Simple-minded Zhao Quan grasped the severity of the accusation and snapped angrily. "Uncle Li, don't spout such lies." Liang Chun pinched his arm sharply. Foolish man, after this blatant smear, he had no right to call the man uncle. Sun Lianji was ready to unleash a stream of furious curses, but Zhao Mu acted without hesitation. He lunged forward and delivered a powerful kick, sending Li Dajiang flying out of their courtyard. This sudden, fierce act stunned everyone present. Ignoring their shocked stares, Zhao Mu chased Li Dajiang outside the gate and spotted dozens of villagers peering through cracks in their doors and over courtyard walls to watch the commotion. He raised his voice loud enough for all to hear. "Li Dajiang, I knew your fishing boat sat idle, and you lacked the skill to catch fish in winter, so I paid you 21 a day to borrow your boat and nets, letting you earn steady silver for your family. Instead, you grew greedy watching me haul in fish, snuck to Batong River to fish on your own, and fell into the current when you caught nothing. Now you falsely accuse me of poisoning fish, all to swindle compensation money from me. We've lived side by side as neighbors for years. How could you stoop so low to ruin my name?" In village disputes, especially against uneducated men, winning an argument relied not on quiet reason, but on volume and claiming the narrative first. Li Dajiang had tried to brand him a criminal, so Zhao Mu countered by labeling Li Dajiang a malicious extortionist. In such village quarrels, whoever spoke first won the crowd's favor. Sure enough, the villagers' opinions shifted instantly, and they shot Li Dajiang looks of disdain and disbelief. They'd always thought him an honest fisherman. How could he resort to false accusations to cheat someone? Worse still, he'd targeted Zhao Mu, a man notorious for mischief. Li Dajiang's guilt gnawed at him. He'd seen no trace of poison in Batong River. His wife, consumed by envy over Zhao Mu's bountiful catch, had forced him to come slander the boy. He'd counted on his decades-long reputation as a fisherman, paired with Zhao Mu's terrible name, to frighten him into begging for mercy and surrendering half his fish earnings for free silver. Instead, he'd been kicked hard in the gut and publicly denounced before the whole village. "You must have poisoned the water. How else could a worthless rogue like you catch so many fish, while I, a lifelong fisherman, come home empty-handed? You plan to sell those fish in town for a fortune, yet you dare not let townsfolk eat poisoned catch. So you poisoned the river to cheat your own neighbors. Everyone knows exactly what kind of scoundrel you are, Zhao Mu." Zhao Mu's rotten reputation stirred doubt among the watching villagers. Many murmured uneasily. This reckless boy seemed utterly incapable of fishing successfully without underhanded tricks. Zhao Mu let out a cold laugh and called back toward the courtyard. "Xiaoshan, bring out a bowl of fish soup." "Drink a spoonful of soup," Zhao Mu said gently. Liang Chun hurried to ladle soup, intending to carry it out herself, worried her young son might drop the bowl. But Zhao Dezhu caught her arm, understanding Zhao Mu's strategy, and told her to let Xiaoshan carry the large bowl out alone. Xiaoshan admired his third uncle deeply. He could hunt, catch endless fish, and fill their empty bellies. He obediently tipped the bowl and gulped down half the soup in big mouthfuls. Zhao Mu fixed Li Dajiang with a sharp stare. "If I'd poisoned the river fish, would my own nephew eat this soup without falling ill? How dare you continue slandering me?" "You." Li Dajiang stumbled over his words, lost for a retort. He was never a quick speaker, and Zhao Mu had seized control of the narrative while presenting irrefutable proof. What grounds did he have left to argue? But Zhao Mu would not stop at silencing his accuser. He intended to crush his scheme completely. He scanned the circle of onlookers and spoke aloud. "Li Dajiang, you're not a cruel man at heart. I don't believe you dreamed up this lie about poisoned fish on your own. Was it your wife who pushed you to do this? We all know her, greedy for every scrap of petty gain in the village. Who hasn't suffered her schemes? I never imagined she'd manipulate you into destroying my reputation. Since we've torn down all pretenses, do not blame me for being unforgiving. Let's go report this to the magistrate. What you're doing is false accusation. You'll get flogged and locked up." Zhao Mu stepped forward, grabbed Li Dajiang by his tunic, and prepared to drag him to the county yamen. Li Dajiang was already eaten up by guilt, and he panicked completely. He thrashed wildly, twisting his body nonstop. "I won't go to the yamen. I'll take back what I said about you poisoning the fish. Is that enough?" "Bullshit. You falsely accused me. And you think you can just brush it off by taking your words back? Suppose I got your wife pregnant, then strangled the baby. Would that also be something we could pretend never happened? Zhao Mu's crude retort sent the villagers roaring with laughter. But once the chuckles died down, they eyed Zhao Mu with fresh wariness. This rascal seemed far fiercer than before. He'd only been a shiftless layabout in the past. Now he acted like a bandit. Shamed and humiliated, Li Dazhong dared not retort. He could tell Zhao Mu was dead set on hauling him to the authorities. The thought of beatings and jail time terrified him. If that came to pass, his wife would surely grab all their savings and run back to her family's home. She might even find herself another husband. It was all that shrew of a wife's fault. He'd only grumbled once, frustrated after hauling dozens of empty nets and catching nothing, wondering if Zhao Mu had poisoned the fish. She'd badgered and forced him to come threaten Zhao Mu and extort money. And now she hid away, watching from the sidelines without a care. Seething with rage, Li Dazhong shouted, "I didn't want to come. My wife drove me here, throwing tantrums until I gave in. If you're going to report anyone, take her with you." Li Dazhong's wife, who'd been secretly watching from a distance, flew into a towering rage. She could hold back no longer and charged out, jabbing a finger straight into Li Dazhong's face as she screamed, "This is all your fault. You cast net after net and caught nothing, then spouted nonsense about Zhao Mu poisoning the fish. I told you to come and you obeyed. Am I your mother or your mistress?" The villagers, starved for entertainment, lit up at the sight of the couple turning on each other. Zhao Mu saw his plan had worked. He stepped back, folding his arms. "Make your choice. One of you comes with me to the magistrate." Li Dazhong dared not pick a fight with Zhao Mu, but he had no qualms hitting his wife. He raised his hand and slapped her hard across the cheek. "This is all you're doing. You were consumed by envy and goaded me into this. You hit me? Help. He's killing his wife." Stung by the slap, the woman collapsed onto the ground, throwing a wild, screaming tantrum, rolling back and forth in the dirt. The crowd erupted into fresh laughter, and some jeered. "Li Dazhong, can't you even keep your own wife in line?" Taunted by the onlookers, Li Dazhong's pride could take no more. He grabbed his wife by the collar and rained slaps down on her face one after another. "I'll teach you to scream. I'll teach you to scheme evil tricks. I'll teach you to force me to extort money. If I'm dragged off to jail, you won't get off scot-free either." At first, the woman had relied on wailing to guilt-trip him, but when she realized it only made him strike harder, the pain grew unbearable. She let out a shrill shriek, seized Li Dazhong's hair, and descended into a vicious brawl with him. "You're just useless. If you could catch fish and put food on the table, I'd never have made you swindle others. How dare you hit me? I'll fight you to the death." The two grappled, trading punches and biting one another, covered head to toe in mud, a pitiful sight. Zhao Mu's goal was achieved. He cupped his fist toward the surrounding villagers. "Fellow townsfolk, I'm sure you can all see clearly now. This couple came to pick a fight out of sheer envy over my earnings. I'll admit it, I was a worthless scoundrel once, no good at all. But after everything that happened with Li Xiuxiu, I've learned a hard lesson. A man must walk the straight and narrow path. If you're nothing but filth, you'll only draw flies. Only if you're gold can you hope for a decent future. I swear I'll never again act selfishly at others' expense. All of you here are my witnesses." Zhao Mu's speech won him newfound respect from the villagers. Could this troublemaker truly have turned over a new leaf? But Li Xiuxiu's family seethed with anger. Chang Yu pulled a long, sour face, pushed through the crowd, and pointed an accusing finger at Zhao Mu. "Who are you calling a fly? My daughter wants nothing to do with you anymore. You're the one clinging to her relentlessly. You're nothing but stinking dog dung." Zhao Mu held up his hands helplessly. "I wasn't talking about you. Why do you rush forward to claim the insult?" The villagers laughed again. Everyone knew exactly what the Li family had done. For all Zhao Mu's past faults, he'd treated Li Xiuxiu with nothing but devotion. Yet the Lis, eager to climb the social ladder, had beaten him nearly to death. No one could blame him for holding a grudge over that injustice. Chang Yu opened her mouth to shout more abuse, when a girl stepped out from the crowd, dressed in a cyan cotton jacket, fair-skinned and beautiful. In this mountain village, she stood out like a lone blooming blossom on a branch. Her delicate cheeks and big bright eyes were lovely, even when she glared. This was none other than Li Xiuxiu, the village beauty Zhao Mu had once fawned over obsessively. To present-day Zhao Mu, however, she struck him as thoroughly ordinary. Li Xiuxiu tugged her mother back, her gaze cold and condescending as she fixed it on Zhao Mu. "Zhao Mu, I've told you countless times. Stop pestering me and harassing my parents. If you don't, I really will report you and have the village head arrest you." At the mention of the village head, Chang Yu regained her arrogance. Her daughter was the village head's son's betrothed bride-to-be. What did she have to fear? Zhao Mu let out a faint laugh. Li Xiuxiu, if you truly want a clean break between us, return all the gifts and silver I gave you. Asking back gifts once they've been given? Is that how shameless the Zhao family is? What of all the time I wasted on you? Li Xiuxiu shot back. Zhao Mu stared blankly for a second, half expecting to see the trendy modern girls he'd known in his past life. Wait, had she somehow picked up their toxic mindset too? Was her secret weapon a popular social media app from his old world? He scratched his head. Your time counts, but mine's worthless? You pestered me and now demand compensation. For your wasted time? What kind of twisted logic is that? Li Xiuxiu scoffed. Damn, this woman was a top-tier master of manipulative rhetoric straight out of that app. Too weary to bicker endlessly, Zhao Mu cut to the point. What of the betrothal silver? Does that count as compensation too? You tried to assault me. Luckily my brothers intervened and stopped you before you succeeded. That silver was compensation for your crime, and I've overlooked the matter out of neighborly kindness. If you keep hounding me with nonsense, don't blame me for reporting you to the authorities. Shall we summon the county magistrate to judge this matter, with the village head as witness? Hatred and threat blazed in Li Xiuxiu's almond-shaped eyes. It was plain to see. If Zhao Mu pressed for his silver back, she would accuse him of rape. What's more, she'd already won the favor of the village head's youngest son. Though the village head held no official rank, he colluded freely with county officials. In the end, Zhao Mu would be the one to suffer ruin. That was Li Xiuxiu's confidence, and the reason she'd gone out of her way to cripple Zhao Mu's reputation, proving her loyalty to the village head's household. All the Zhao family burned with rage at Li Xiuxiu's words. The woman was vicious beyond belief. Not only had she kept the betrothal silver meant for her hand, she intended to brand Zhao Mu a sexual predator for the rest of his life. If he dared fight back, she would have him arrested. Zhao Dezhu could stand it no longer. He shuffled forward trembling, ready to speak, only to break into violent coughing fits. Zhao Mu quickly sent his tearful mother to escort his father back home. If this were modern times, he would have had no way to counter such manipulative women, even with fair-minded law enforcement. But this was ancient times. Rules of justice were warped here, yet reputation meant everything. Zhao Mu locked his gaze hard on Li Xiuxiu. You claim I assaulted you? Then explain exactly what happened that day. Are you saying your single word is enough for everyone to believe you? Do you take all these villagers for fools? The watching crowd realized they were being roped into the dispute, yet they sided with Zhao Mu's logic. If an assault had supposedly taken place, the full story needed telling. Besides, hearing a young woman recount an alleged attack made for riveting gossip. They stared at Li Xiuxiu eagerly, waiting for her account. Li Xiuxiu had not expected Zhao Mu to think so sharply. Once upon a time, all it took was a word from her to muddle his head and make him agree to anything. Why would he not cower at her threats now? As for describing the alleged assault, first of all, it had never happened. If she laid out the false story in front of everyone, she would disgrace herself utterly. The village head's family would be humiliated and refuse to take her as their daughter-in-law. Darkness clouded Li Xiuxiu's features. Zhao Mu, I chose to spare you out of neighborly goodwill. Do you insist on digging your own grave? Very well, let us go report this to the magistrate at once. Go then. Don't hold back. Zhao Mu stepped slowly closer, lowering his voice to warn her. Even if the village head's foolish son bribes officials to frame me for assault, I'd rather confess the false charge, endure floggings, waste half my life, and rot away in prison than hold my tongue. I'll shout every explicit detail of this so-called assault for all to hear. Do you believe me? I can destroy your good name completely. After that, do you still dream of marrying into the village head's household? See if any man for miles around will take you then. Li Xiuxiu finally grew truly afraid. For all her bluster, she was still an unmarried young woman, and her reputation was her most precious possession. If Zhao Mu publicly spread lewd tales about her, she would be ruined. She'd thought fabricating the assault accusation would subdue him, yet it had backfired and become a noose around her own neck. Even so, she forced composure and refused to back down. What could you possibly do to ruin my name? Simple. I'll describe your figure in detail, and the silk undergarment you wore that day, Zhao Mu sneered. This was the advantage of living in ancient times. If he spoke such words, Zhao Mu would be punished, but Li Xiuxiu's honor would be shattered alongside his. Unlike modern society, where even exposing every lie of a false accuser meant nothing, and they could stream live broadcasts crying victimhood or publish books for profit. Furious, Li Xiuxiu let out a shrill scream. You lie? When did you ever see me? She cut herself off mid-sentence, then hissed in a lowered voice. You bastard, when did you lay eyes on my undergarments? Zhao Mu chuckled coldly. No one cares whether I saw them or not. The crowd only craves a good show. Li Xiuxiu scanned the surrounding villagers. Sure enough, no one looked upon her with sympathy. Every face glinted with malicious delight at her misfortune. Her skin paled as she realized she had lost this battle entirely. She'd underestimated just how shameless Zhao Mu could be. Was this still the man who'd once obeyed her every whim without question? Very well. You win this round. With that sharp remark, Li Xiuxiu turned to flee, desperate to escape the humiliation of the crowd's stares. Zhao Mu blocked her path, raising his voice. Apologize to me before you leave. Otherwise, well. Li Xiuxiu froze mid-step, staring back in disbelief. You demand an apology from me? Apologize. Or I'll strip you bare right here for all to see. We'll both be destroyed together if it comes to that. You have a bright future ahead of you, while I have nothing but a ruined reputation and a worthless life. Who do you think stands to lose more? Once more, Zhao Mu wielded his terrible reputation as a threat. Li Xiuxiu's face drained of all color. She stepped back instinctively, clutching her clothing tight. You wouldn't dare. Want to test me? Li Xiuxiu dared not take that risk. After a long, strained pause, she ground out helplessly. You said you'd changed your ways. I've changed for everyone else. But for a vicious woman like you, killing you would still be too kind. Zhao Mu's expression turned icy. She'd swindled his betrothal silver, demanded grain from his household, falsely accused him of assault, and beaten him within an inch of his life. Every single act had been meant to drive him to ruin. If he let her walk free now, the rage would eat him alive. Yet killing her publicly would only cost him his own life. He would first collect partial repayment for his losses and bide his time until he could destroy her utterly. Li Xiuxiu saw Zhao Mu meant every word of his threat. She shot a desperate glance toward Chang Yu, but her mother stood frozen, unsure what to do. Seeing her mother powerless to help, Li Xiuxiu bit her lip and yielded for the moment, murmuring softly, I'm sorry. Speak louder. Zhao Mu suddenly boomed. Li Xiuxiu flinched in fright, tears welling up in her beautiful eyes, painting a pitiful picture. In his past life as her smitten suitor, Zhao Mu's heart would have ached for her instantly. He would have strived to pluck stars from the sky if she'd asked. Now, he watched her with complete indifference, waiting. Her tearful pleas and pitiful act did nothing to move him. Desperate to secure her marriage to the village head's son, Li Xiuxiu gritted her teeth and forced her voice louder for all to hear. What happened earlier was merely a misunderstanding. I wronged you. Bastard rogue. Just wait until I marry into the village head's household. I'll make you pay dearly for this humiliation. The villagers exchanged strange looks upon hearing Li Xiuxiu's apology. A misunderstanding? What misunderstanding? Had Zhao Mu truly never assaulted her? Which meant her entire family had beaten him solely to swindle his silver and climb the social ladder. Disgust washed over the crowd as they eyed Li Xiuxiu. She was uneducated and short-sighted. All she'd cared about was marrying up, never realizing what her reluctant apology implied to everyone watching. Zhao Mu laughed loudly. Li Xiuxiu, if you claim the assault accusation was nothing but a misunderstanding, return my betrothal silver at once. I want nothing to do with a woman who so easily fabricates false accusations against men. With those words, the engagement was broken off by Zhao Mu, not the Li family. In plain sight of everyone, Zhao Mu was the one. Rejecting Li Xiuxiu, Li Xiuxiu realized she'd walked straight into his trap, trembling with unbridled fury. The bastard had threatened her from the very start to clear his name and retrieve his silver. How could he be so shameless? Chang Yu flew into a rage. Return what betrothal silver? Even if you never assaulted my daughter, she suffered loss from being engaged to you. What loss? I gave you silver and grain, and never once touched her hand. What loss could she possibly claim? Or do you insist I did something untoward to her? Zhao Mu retorted, with biting sarcasm. Chang Yu panicked, waving her hands frantically. No, you never laid a finger on my Xiuxiu. Don't spread such lies. Enough, mother, be quiet. Li Xiuxiu burned with shame under the villagers' unblinking stares, every nerve screaming discomfort. Though most villagers shared the Li surname and were distant kin, they showed no mercy when scandal unfolded. Rumors and gossip would spread like wildfire. Worse still, some men might take her public disgrace as license to harass her. If that happened, not even 2 tongues would suffice to clear her name. She snapped at her mother, dropping all pretense of gentleness, glaring venomously at Zhao Mu. As it happens, I want no further ties to a ruffian like you either. I will return your betrothal silver. Leave me alone from this day forward. Having spoken with false bravado, she turned and fled at a hurried pace, Chang Yu struggling to keep up behind her. The mother chattered non-stop as she chased after her daughter, pleading desperately. Girl, that's 5 taels of silver. We can't give it back. We rely on that money to survive the winter. Besides, the village head's family said they'd offer little betrothal silver for you. Zhao Mu let out a quiet laugh. Demand exorbitant silver when marrying a poor man, yet accept nothing when wedding someone wealthy? Humans always found it easiest to bully those with nothing. Li Xiuxiu departed, and the spectacle ended. Well, almost. The brawling Li Dajiang and his wife had slipped away unnoticed some time earlier. With no more entertainment to watch, the villagers dispersed to their homes to lie down and conserve energy. The excitement had drained their strength, and each would likely need an extra half-bowl of congee to recover. Zhao Mu led his stunned elder brother and sister-in-law back to his courtyard, latching the wooden gate shut behind them. Once inside, Zhao Quan could not wrap his head around what had transpired. We actually got the betrothal silver back? Liang Chun sighed with emotion. Truly, we'd long thought that money was lost to us forever. Seeing their astonishment, Zhao Mu spoke confidently. Rest assured, this is only the beginning. Not just the betrothal silver. Every grain of grain Li Xiuxiu took from our home, plus the medical fees for my injuries from their beating, all of it will be repaid. Joy flooded Liang Chun's face. If we recover all that, our family will live far more comfortably. Only Zhao Quan wore a mask of heavy worry. Everyone says Li Xiuxiu is thick. With the village head's household, won't they seek revenge against us? Liang Chun's smile faded, anxiety creeping over her features. Zhao Mu smiled calmly. Brother, sister-in-law, you need not fret. The two stared at him intently, expecting a clever plan. Instead, he continued, the village head's household will absolutely make trouble for us. Worrying changes nothing. His brother and sister-in-law fell silent, dumbfounded. How could he know retaliation was coming yet remained so unconcerned? Truth be told, Zhao Mu was far from unconcerned, but anxiety would do him no good. He knew Li Xiuxiu was a cunning woman, while she paled in comparison to master manipulators from his past life. In this backward era, she easily wrapped countless men around her finger. The village head's youngest son would undoubtedly become another of her besotted lapdogs. Humiliated as she was today, she would urge him to take revenge on Zhao Mu. The village head's family held three primary ways to retaliate. First, they could relegate our farmlands to the very end of the irrigation line next spring, denying us timely water. Second, they could draft our household first for corvée labor. Third, as the household overseeing village peace and order, they could manufacture trouble for him through official channels. The first two posed little threat. He could abandon farming and live entirely off hunting instead. Corvée labor could be bought off with silver. Only the third risked disaster. He'd committed countless misdeeds in his past. If they dug up old crimes to charge him, he would face ruin. Zhao Mu's current priority was to keep the village head's household too occupied to plot revenge against him. As village head, he was obligated to handle any danger arising within the village first and foremost. Yet fabricating a crisis out of thin air was impossible. Zhao Mu's gaze drifted toward the distant mountains. His solution lay with Azure Dragon Ridge. As Zhao Mu had predicted, Li Xiuxiu wasted no time seeking help from the village head's household. She dared not march straight to the village head to incite retaliation. For one thing, she was not yet officially part of their family. Even after marriage, word of a daughter-in-law. Begging her father-in-law to persecute her former fiancé would spread and become a laughingstock, and the village head would never tolerate such embarrassment. Instead, she would manipulate the village head's youngest son, her new smitten admirer. Li Xiuxiu tidied her appearance slightly, then rubbed her eyes hard until they were red and puffy. With tear-streaked cheeks, she set off to find Li Kongming, the village head's youngest son. She'd already thought up her excuse. She was going to borrow money. Money to pay back Zhao Mu's betrothal gifts. She'd make Li Kongming see that. Zhao Mu had bullied and pressured her relentlessly. When Li Xiuxiu found him, Li Kongming was drinking with a handful of worthless cronies. He spotted Xiuxiu approaching, all dolled up and gaudy, eye-catching clothes. Every one of his friends fixed lecherous, greedy eyes on her. Xiuxiu grew deeply uncomfortable under their stares and whispered to Li Kongming, Brother Ming, come here. I need to talk to you privately. Li Kongming swelled with pride watching his pals, unable to tear their gazes away from his woman. He was already drunk, and the urge to show off surged through him. He had no intention of leaving. Instead, he grabbed Xiuxiu's small hand, his speech slurred from alcohol. Xiuxiu, come meet my brothers, Brother Zhou and Brother Ma. Xiuxiu instinctively pulled her, hand free when he grasped it. They'd already crossed far more intimate lines behind closed doors to win Li Kongming's heart. But in front of outsiders, as an unmarried girl not yet welcomed into his household, she dared not act overly affectionate. Li Kongming paid no mind. He clutched her hand tight, tugging her toward his lap to make her sit on his thigh. Panicked, Xiao quickly said, "Brother Ming, you're drunk." "Drunk? I could down several more large bowls. They're all my close friends. What have you got to be shy about? We've even kissed, for heaven's sake. What's there to fear?" Li Kongming boasted triumphantly. Zhou and Ma gasped in unison, consumed by envy. Good grief. They hadn't even wed. Yet they'd already kissed? This wasn't some brothel girl, but a proper young lady from a decent family. Kissing a prostitute meant nothing special, but stealing a kiss from an unmarried maiden of good standing was wildly thrilling. Xiaoxiu's face paled in shock. She never imagined Li Kongming would blab everything, and she struggled harder to pull away. "Brother Ming, you've had too much. To drink, stop talking nonsense." "Nonsense? Last time up on the mountain, I slipped my hand inside your brother Ming." Xiao cut him off in a panic. "If you keep this up, I'm leaving." This trick had worked flawlessly on Zhao Mu before. He'd been utterly wrapped around her finger, willing to hand over anything she asked for. Li Kongming was far less easy to manipulate. Catching the teasing grins on Zhou and Ma's faces, his temper flared. "You won't give me an ounce of face in front of my own brothers? Then get out of here." Xiao stared at him in disbelief. "How could you treat me like this? What's wrong with me? I've no shortage of women. Dozens would beg to marry into my family. I don't need you." Li Kongming was half crazed with alcohol, and bitter resentment simmered because Xiao still refused to fully give herself to him. Did she take him for a lovesick lapdog? Xiao trembled from head to toe with rage. All her flattery and devotion had been taken for granted. The more she gave, the less he valued her. In this moment, she felt no sympathy for all the grievances Zhao Mu had endured before. Hatred for him burned hotter instead. If it weren't for that wretched man, she would never have stooped to begging Li Kongming to deal with him. With that thought, weighed down by all the time and affection she'd already wasted on this mess, she refused to walk away empty-handed. Ignoring the watching men beside them, she gazed at Li Kongming with tears welling in her eyes. "Brother Ming, I only acted out of line with you because my heart belongs to you. I hope to win your sincere love, yet you care so little for me. I came today because that brute Zhao Mu bullied me, forcing me to repay his betrothal money. I'd hoped you'd help me. If this is how you mean to treat me, then forget it. I might as well submit to Zhao Mu and let him have his way with me." Li Kongming's harsh words had spilled out impulsively, fueled by liquor and wounded pride after being rejected while showing off before his friends. The second the words left his mouth, he regretted them. Now Xiao stood there weeping heartbreakingly, threatening to leave. He hadn't yet fully claimed this beauty for himself. He couldn't bear to let her go. At the mention of Zhao Mu, he seized the chance to put on a show, glaring and shouting, "Zhao Mu, that bastard gave you trouble. It's all over the betrothal money from before." Xiao sighed in relief, glad the conversation had turned to her real purpose. She pulled out all her scheming, tearful wails pouring forth. "My greedy parents demanded 5 taels of silver from the Zhao family as betrothal gifts. I told them Zhao Mu was no good, that we should have nothing to do with him. He tried to assault me once, and now he's throwing a fit demanding his money back. If we refuse to pay, he's insisting I marry him. You know my heart is only yours, Brother Ming. No other man has ever held a place in it." Li Kongming slammed his palm on the table and roared in fury. "That delusional dog. I'll beat him within an inch of his life." Xiao never intended for him to fight Zhao Mu personally. A face-to-face confrontation would risk their secret being exposed. If Li Kongming got injured in a brawl, the village head would fly into a rage. Their entire affair would be ruined for good. She grabbed Li Kongming's arm, putting on a pitiful, tearful expression. "Brother Ming, you can't go yourself. Lowering yourself to tangle with a worthless rogue would tarnish your reputation." Li Kongming's fondness for her deepened at her concern. "Don't worry. Beating a nobody like him won't amount to anything." Xiao still shook her head, glancing sideways at Zhou and Ma. Their unbridled lecherous stares had left her seething with irritation earlier. An idea came to her: shift the trouble onto them. "Brother Ming, your 2 good friends look tall and strong. Dealing with Zhao Mu would be no trouble for them, I'm sure. I've heard they value loyalty above all else. Would they be willing to lend a hand?" The 2 men, Zhou and Ma, froze in shock at her words. Why drag them into this mess? They were only fair-weather friends who tagged along with Li Kongming to eat and drink for free. Getting mixed up in a beating was far more trouble than it was worth. Li Kongming was a poor judge of character, truly believing they were his closest brothers. He thumped his chest confidently. "They're as close as blood brothers to me. Of course they'll help. Right, Brother Zhou, Brother Ma?" Zhou and Ma cursed Xiao silently for stirring up trouble for no reason. But their families were far poorer than Li Kongming's. If they wanted to keep mooching free meals and wine off him, they had no choice but to agree. Besides, there were two of them against just Zhao Mu. Teaching him a lesson would be simple enough. They stood together at once. You're absolutely right, Brother Ming. How could we refuse? It's nothing more than putting a lowlife thug in his place. Child's play. Relief washed over Xiao once they agreed. Let the three of them fight it out. Win or lose, she'd bear no blame. Best of all would be if they tore each other apart, covered in scrapes and bruises. If they could scare Zhao Mu off from demanding the 5 taels of silver entirely, that would be perfect. Now that her plan was set, Xiao made to leave. Li Kongming refused to let her go, tugging her arm and begging her to stay and drink with them. Even for married women, drinking alone with strange men would earn vicious gossip, let alone an unwed maiden. Xiao naturally wanted nothing to do with it. Yet she knew Li Kongming was nothing like the foolish, obedient Zhao Mu. If she pushed him too far, the consequences would be far worse. She endured burning shame and dragged him outside, where they lingered in close, intimate whispers. He took every chance to paw at her, and only let her go once he'd stolen plenty of liberties. Humiliation burned through her, and her hatred for Zhao Mu flared hotter than ever. As they parted, she specifically told Li Kongming to tell Zhou and Ma to strike hard without mercy. Li Kongming needed no reminder. He'd been itching to get back at Zhao Mu all along. How dare the beauty he'd set his heart on be betrothed to that man first? And if Xiao acted so loose and willing to let him toy with her, hadn't she done the same things with Zhao Mu? The more he thought about it, the angrier he grew. Fueled by alcohol, he sought out Zhou and Ma afterward and ordered them to break Zhao Mu's arms and legs. If they succeeded, he'd reward them with several taels of silver to flee to another county to hide. He also promised that once he became village head, he would speak to the head of their village to waive their taxes and labor corvée. Zhou and Ma had no idea whether a village head held such authority, but they were still drunk and easily fooled by his promises. They shouted together, vowing to beat Zhao Mu brutally to avenge Li Kongming and his woman. No one could fathom where such fierce hatred had sprung from. That night, Zhao Mu lay in bed, rehashing all the miserable events of the day. After falling out with Li Dajiang, he could no longer borrow his boat, scrapping his afternoon fishing plans entirely. He'd likely never get to use the boat again, unless he scraped together enough money to buy one himself. But he still owed outstanding debts. Where would he find money for a boat? His earlier claim that he could borrow a boat from another village had only been a lie to fool Li Dajiang. In these hard times, no one would lend their livelihood tools to a stranger from another village. Only someone with an impeccable, widely respected reputation could pull that off. Zhao Mu clearly had no such standing. It seemed hunting was his only option. He'd head up the mountain at dawn tomorrow. If he could catch a roe deer or stag, that would be ideal. Their meat fetched top prices. Deer meat, deer blood, and velvet antlers were all potent nourishing tonics, sought after by wealthy buyers willing to pay exorbitant sums. No era ever lacked rich men with money to spend. Lost in his thoughts, Zhao Mu drifted off to sleep. Early the next morning, he rose at dawn and eagerly opened his system panel. Today's one-win flash sale item, Beast Call Compendium. Beast Call Compendium records the habits and vocal cues of all wild animals. Allows the user to mimic their cries and lure the corresponding creatures over. Zhao Mu stared in shock. A beast taming skill? No, not quite full beast taming. It only mimicked animal calls to draw them near. Once the animals arrived, they would still rely on sight and scent to judge danger. If they spotted something off or caught an unfamiliar smell, they would bolt instantly. Animals lacked complex human intelligence, yet their survival instincts far surpassed humanity's imagination. Though it was no true beast-taming art, this compendium would make hunting far easier. Zhao Mu quickly retrieved the item and skimmed through its contents. While he handed most of his hunting earnings over to his sister-in-law to support the family, he'd stashed 50 copper coins for himself, enough for his immediate needs. The compendium covered an astonishing range of creatures, from tiny tadpoles and crickets all the way up to tigers and black bears. Each entry detailed their habits, likes and dislikes, physical anatomy, distinct vocalizations, and how to replicate their cries. Zhao Mu picked the cricket entry first and attempted to copy its chirp. His first attempt sounded like a ghost wailing in the night. Following the book's instructions, he adjusted his throat positioning and mouth shape, then tried again. This time he'd gotten roughly 50% of the sound right. Third try, fourth try. After 10 consecutive attempts, his cricket chirp was flawless, indistinguishable from the real thing. The eerie noise terrified his parents in the next room. Sun Lianji pressed her eye to the crack of the door, peering inside anxiously. What was her youngest son doing, howling alone in his room like a madman? Little Zhao Xiaoshan, however, feared nothing. He leaned against the window and called out, "Uncle San, why is there a cricket chirping in your room? Did you catch one to keep?" Children had few toys in this era, and their favorite pastime was catching small bugs to play with. Cricket fighting came naturally to them, though their games were far less elaborate than those of wealthy banner men in later dynasties. Zhao Mu spotted the small head peeking through the window and felt a surge of warmth. He laughed loudly. "Xiaoshan, later when I head up the mountain, I'll catch a few songbirds for you to play with." "What kind of birds?" Zhao Xiaoshan lit up with excitement. Zhao Mu thought for a moment, unwilling to make empty promises. "Depends on what luck brings." The boy failed to notice his uncle's hesitation and remained overjoyed. "All right, I'll wait for you at home, Uncle San." "Sure thing." Seeing the child's delight lifted Zhao Mu's spirits. He stepped outside to eat a quick breakfast. The household now had stored grain, and everyone knew Zhao Mu would fall into a foul mood without proper food. Liang Chun had risen early to reheat yesterday's fish soup and bake flatbreads for the morning meal. After eating his fill, he splashed cold water on his face and prepared to leave for the mountains. Zhao Dezhu watched him from the doorway and called out a warning. "If you spot wild boar or wolf tracks, stay hidden and don't reveal yourself. Remember all the tracking signs I taught you." "I know, father." Zhao Mu walked off toward the hills. Son Lianji turned to her husband, grumbling. "Why didn't you stop him from going up the mountain? Hiding from wolves and boars won't help if he runs straight into one." Zhao Dezhu sighed irritably. "You raised that boy yourself. You know no one can rein him in." Zhao Quan, oblivious to the tense atmosphere, tried to mediate. "Mother, it's a good thing third brother wants to hunt. It'll keep him from running around with worthless friends and slipping back into his old reckless ways." Son Lianji dared not snap at her husband, but she unleashed her frustration on her eldest son. "Be off with you. Now you dare lecture your own mother? Go draw water from the well at once." Zhao Quan took the brunt of her anger for no reason and shot a helpless glance at his wife. Liang Chun rolled her eyes at him. He'd lived under this roof for years and still couldn't tell when to hold his tongue. He deserved the scolding. When Zhao Mu reached the mountain foot, he found a secluded spot to change into his warm protective suit, then marched uphill full of confidence. While the Beast Call Compendium contained exhaustive information on every animal, it mostly focused on identifying and understanding wildlife, with no actual hunting techniques outlined. He relied entirely on the tracking methods his father had taught him to search for game. His plan was simple: find animal tracks, mimic their calls to lure them close, then take them down with a single shot. Perfect. Animals struggled to find enough food this season, forcing them to wander far and wide to forage. He soon spotted pheasant droppings and scratch marks in the dirt nearby. Surveying the surroundings, he spotted several fruit trees, their branches stripped bare of leaves. All the ripe fruit had long fallen to the ground and rotted into mud. The stench of fermented fruit was what had drawn the pheasants over. Pheasants loved grain, grass seeds, tender foliage, and wild berries above all else. If he could lure a flock within range, it would be excellent game. Pheasant stew made a delicious meal. But pheasants were far too small. A single gunshot would blow the bird to shreds. A bow and arrow would be better. Zhao Mu stroked the bow slung over his back, carried only as a cover to avoid suspicion, and a spark of excitement flared. He'd once dreamed of being a heroic swordsman, drawing a bow to shoot giant eagles. Time to test his skill. Zhao Mu scrambled quickly up a tree and unslung his bow and arrows. Having memorized the pheasants' calls from the compendium, he began to mimic their cries. Pheasants made dozens of distinct chirps, each tone carrying a different meaning. Right now, he copied the call a pheasant used to summon its flock after finding food. Cluck, 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 he shouted the cry over a dozen times at the top of his lungs. Only scattered birds fluttered away in alarm. No pheasants appeared. Was the compendium useless? His arms ached from holding the drawn bow. Doubt and worry gnawed at him. If the Beast Call Compendium failed to work, hunting would remain far more difficult than he'd hoped. Would he really have to borrow money to buy a fishing boat after all? Just then, a flurry of beating wings cut through the quiet woods. Zhao Mu spun toward the sound. 4 or 5 pheasants came darting forward, half flying, half sprinting across the underbrush. A surge of joy washed over him. He shook out his sore arms, nocked an arrow, drew the bow, and took aim as the flock drew near. Whoosh! The arrow veered wildly off course and flew wide. It missed by a mile. The shot spooked the entire flock. Squawking in terror, they flapped their wings and fled into the trees as if fleeing a raid by village constables. Zhao Mu stared blankly. Clearly, he'd vastly overestimated his own archery skills. Never mind pheasants then. If he could lure a wolf down, he'd take that instead. He was safely perched high in the tree. Wolves could not climb after him. A few well-placed shots would kill it easily. With that thought, Zhao Mu tilted his head back and let out a long, realistic wolf howl. It was though. The eerie, lifelike howl echoed through the entire mountain forest, sending countless birds screaming into the distance. The fleeing pheasants vanished without a trace. Meanwhile, halfway up the mountainside, two men crept along furtively, searching the woods. They were Zhou Hejing and Ma Yuanjun, the same two drunks who drank with Li Kongming the night before. While intoxicated, they'd agreed to beat Zhao Mu on his behalf. Once sober, they'd planned to back out. But Li Kongming had pressed 1 qian of silver into their hands to buy crude weapons. After talking it over, they'd resolved to cripple Zhao Mu completely to earn Li Kongming's favor. They'd trailed Zhao Mu from the moment he left home, keeping far enough back to stay hidden. But the thick mountain foliage had separated them from their target. "Brother Zhou, where's that brat? I can't find him anywhere." Damned infuriating. "Once we track him down, I'll make him kowtow and beg for forgiveness. Right? You hold him down to bow, and I'll break every limb he's got. Make sure we wipe away all traces afterward, so the authorities can't trace it back to us. Relax. Even if someone investigates, it'll only be the village head. Do you think Li Kongming will let the Green Dragon village head turn us in?" "True enough. Wait, what's that noise?" Ma Yuanjun tilted his head, listening closely. The next second, a long wolf howl rolled through the trees. "Good heavens, there's a wolf nearby." Zhou and Ma scrambled headlong down the mountainside, not daring to linger for a single second. The howl had sounded far too close, barely several hundred feet away. Wolves possessed an incredibly sharp sense of smell. If they caught their scent, the beast would hunt them down and tear them apart. Screaming and wailing in terror, they stumbled all the way back to the village foot, where Li Kongming and Xiuxiu waited for news. Xiuxiu stared at them in revulsion and stepped back 2 paces. Their clothes were torn to rags by sharp branches, their faces crisscrossed with fresh scratches, blood mixing with streaming tears and snot. Li Kongming was utterly confused. "What's wrong with you two?" "There are wolves. Wolves. Not far from us." Zhou burst into tears and shouted. Ma Yuanjun nodded frantically. Li Xiuxiu was terrified. Wolves up the mountain? Would they come down into the village? Li Kongming's heart hammered against his ribs, yet he forced a calm tone to ask, "Where did you see the wolves?" "Halfway up the mountain." Ma Yuanjun was too embarrassed to admit he'd panicked without even spotting a single wolf. Halfway up the mountain. Panic finally washed over Li Kongming. This was not the tallest peak of Green Dragon Ridge. The mountainside was barely 1 li away from the village. Wolves rarely ventured this close under ordinary circumstances, only when bitter cold left them starved and forced to roam far for food. If they'd reached the mountainside, would they descend? Absolutely. There had been past incidents where ravenous wild wolves, drawn by the aroma of food from the village, came down and attacked people. A wolf pack halfway up the slope spelled catastrophic trouble. Li Kongming forgot all about Zhao Mu and the others. He sprinted straight home to sound the alarm. Wolves on the mountain could quickly turn into a plague. They had to take precautions at once. As the saying went, the richer a man grew, the more he feared death, and that explained Li Kongming's frantic urgency. Li Xiuxiu stared toward the mountain, torn between fear and resentment. "Zhao Mu, how absurdly lucky you are." For the next while, the village elder's household would be fully occupied with guarding against the wolf threat, leaving no time to scheme against Zhao Mu. It looked like she would have to return the betrothal money after all. Damn him, he deserved to get eaten by wolves up there. Little did any of them know, those wolves were all Zhao Mu's doing. Zhao Mu had howled for ages, yet not a single wolf, not even a strand of wolf fur, had appeared. It made sense really. Even small game was scarce halfway up this mountain. Wolves would hunt deep within Green Dragon Ridge, far from here. Nothing would draw them over unless something powerful lured them. The howl of one lone packmate held no appeal at all. Pointless random yowling would get him nowhere. He needed a proper plan. Zhao Mu thought it through. Large game was nearly impossible to hunt. They only wandered closer to human territory when food ran out entirely in the depths of the hills. Mid-sized animals were also hard to come by here. Pheasants and hares were his best bet, but he could not waste gunshots on such small prey. That left only one option: traps. The mountain abounded with vines and willow branches. Thick rattan was too conspicuous, but slender willow twigs were perfect. He climbed a tree and snapped off dozens of willow switches, careful not to strip a single tree bare, otherwise local authorities would come questioning him. Once he'd gathered over 100 twigs, he wove them carefully into a net. It was simple work. He did not need a fishing net or woven basket, only a loose grid structure that would hold its shape. When the willow net was finished, he tied extra twigs around its edges to make drawstrings. He tugged the cords to test, confirming the whole net could cinch tight in an instant. That was all he needed. He clambered back up the tree and mimicked the call of a pheasant once more. Pheasants had short memories and soon fluttered over, wandering cluelessly into the net's range. Zhao Mu gave the drawstrings a violent yank and leaped down from the tree. One end of the willow cord fastened to the net, the other gripped in his hands, while the middle looped over a sturdy tree branch acting as a beam. As he dropped, the net snapped shut tight, trapping 7 or 8 squawking, flapping pheasants inside. They thrashed wildly, sending feathers flying and filling the air with shrill cries. Their strength was far greater than he'd expected. The hastily woven net would not hold for long. Zhao Mu grabbed stones and struck the birds one by one, knocking them unconscious. Once all the pheasants were subdued, he bound them with willow strips and headed downhill, only to spot a trail of fresh, messy hooves. Wild boar tracks, stamped recently that very day. Boars were supposed to stay near the small bamboo grove, which was a fair distance from here. Had hunger driven them to wander everywhere? Zhao Mu followed the trail and spotted 3 distinct sets of prints varying in depth and size. He pulled out his illustrated wildlife guide to cross-reference and confirmed it. 1 adult male, 1 adult female, and a piglet, a whole family foraging together. He recalled his father's story about a dangerous group of wild boars he'd encountered once. This must have been the same herd. Excitement bubbled up inside him. Slinging the pheasants over one arm, he pulled out his gun and pursued the tracks. The trail wound on for 4 or 5 li around the mountainside until thick fallen leaves covered the prints completely, cutting off his chase. Still unwilling to give up, he climbed another tree and began imitating wild boar grunts, howling nonstop for half an hour until his throat burned dry. Even with the throat care techniques from his guidebook, his vocal cords could not endure such constant calling. Just as Zhao Mu resigned himself to failure, a wild boar trotted toward him, snorting loudly. Its fur was pitch black, its body plump, and sharp tusks jutted from its ferocious snout. Yet it measured barely 3 chi long, clearly not a fully grown adult. Disappointment flickered through him, but he kept grunting to draw it nearer. The young boar scurried over, circling the pine tree where Zhao Mu hid, sniffing the air and tilting its head upward repeatedly. Luckily, he'd chosen a tall pine thick with needle foliage that concealed him from the piglet's sight. He howled until his voice nearly gave out, yet no adult boars appeared. Growing bored with no food or kin to find, the piglet turned to leave. Zhao Mu resolved to take whatever game he could. Greed would get him nowhere. He raised his gun, aimed at the retreating young boar, and fired. Bang, 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 bang. 5 consecutive shots rang out. The piglet shrieked in fright and bolted, blood splattering as bullets tore into its body. But it still kept running even after taking 5 hits. Zhao Mu's heart sank. His father had not exaggerated how tough these creatures were. If a juvenile could withstand so much gunfire, fully grown boars must be terrifying beyond measure. Gritting his teeth, he squeezed off 3 more targeted shots. 1 bullet struck square in its back, piercing straight through the heart. The piglet let out a final agonizing squeal and collapsed to the ground, only able to twitch weakly. Overjoyed, Zhao Mu jumped down from the tree and rushed over. He tried lifting the carcass, shocked by its weight. At nearly a meter long, even as a juvenile, it tipped the scales at close to 200 caddies. Wild boar meat fetched a far higher price than domestic pork, though it lacked fat and carried a strong, uncastrated gamey stench. Wealthy folk knew ways to mask the odor. Villagers also believed wild game held special nourishing benefits. Tired of plain farm livestock, they craved rare mountain meat. Just as the old saying went, homegrown blooms never compare to wild blossoms. With this boar, plus the betrothal money Li Xiuxiu owed him, his outstanding debts would shrink drastically. Before long, he would be entirely debt-free. Cheerfully, Zhao Mu bound willow ropes around the boar's body and strained to drag it downhill. The load was immensely heavy, and years of idleness, drinking, and debauchery had wasted away his physique. Every few paces, he had to stop, gasping for breath. He cursed his past self silently. A noble young master wasting his health on vice was one thing, but a peasant boy throwing away his body like this? Infuriating. Still, that fool had been himself once, so he held back the harsh thoughts and kept hauling the boar forward. When he reached the foot of the mountain, he spotted a group of villagers digging wild vegetables, including his sister-in-law Yang Chun. Zhao Xiaoshan played with other children nearby, occasionally lending a hand with the digging, yet his eyes drifted constantly toward the mountain. He knew his third uncle had gone hunting again and would bring back birds for him. Staring uphill, Xiaoshan spotted a hunched figure laboring downhill, struggling terribly with some burden. Who could be so weak? He squinted and realized it was his own uncle. Third uncle. Uncle Zhao Mu's back. His shout drew every villager's gaze upward. Liang Chun craned her neck and saw Zhao Mu straining to haul something large, a wide smile spreading across her face. He must have bagged big game. Xiaoshan, run fetch your father to help. I'll go meet your uncle right away. Coming. Xiaoshan sprinted home like the wind. Liang Chun hurried uphill, first catching sight of the pile of pheasants and clapping her hands delightedly. Good heavens, so many pheasants. You're incredibly skilled, uncle. Zhao Mu twitched his mouth dryly. When he had nothing to offer, she called him third boy. When he brought back game, suddenly it was uncle. Typical woman. Then he realized she had not seen the boar, buried under piles of fallen leaves dragged over its body as he hauled it down. He brushed the foliage aside. Sister-in-law, there's more. More. Liang Chun leaned forward to look, then let out a shrill scream at the sight of the tusked, ferocious wild boar. She stumbled backward until she landed hard on her rear. The other villagers had only glanced over casually, consumed with digging wild greens, jealous yet not daring to crowd around. At her startled cry, their curiosity overcame them, and they stretched their necks to peer uphill, several trudging up to investigate. A chorus of gasps erupted when they laid eyes on the massive boar. Merciful heaven! A wild boar! How huge it is! Did you hunt this all alone, Brother Mo? Exclamations rippled through the crowd, drawing dozens more onlookers. Soon nearly 100 village men rushed over armed with pitchforks and farm tools. Zhao Quan led the pack. On his dash home, Xiaoshan had screamed, "He's coming down the mountain," nonstop. The villagers had just received the village elder's warning of wolves roaming the hills, and they'd panicked. They grabbed weapons, thinking a wolf pack descended. Half the village had assembled at the mountain foot. When Zhao Quan spotted a stunned Zhao Mu standing beside piles of pheasants and a full-grown boar, shock washed over him. He spun around and smacked Xiaoshan on the back of the head. Why shout like bandits raiding the village just because your uncle came home? Xiaoshan paid no mind to the sting, his eyes searching Zhao Mu eagerly. Where were the birds he'd promised me? Zhao Mu caught his nephew's hopeful gaze, feeling slightly awkward. He had tried catching small birds, but the willow net could not trap them. Still, he had another fun treasure for Xiaoshan, the boar's bladder. A rare treat in rural villages, it could be blown up like a balloon or stuffed as the inner bladder of a kudzu football. Farmers only kept them when slaughtering pigs for Lunar New Year, yet times were so lean most sold their hogs for grain rather than butcher them for celebration. Word spread fast that Zhao Mu had returned with a wild boar and a flock of pheasants, witnessed by the wolf-panicked villagers. Every onlooker's eyes burned green with envy. Fresh boar meat, such a rare luxury. Their gazes toward Zhao Mu also brimmed with newfound awe. Wild boars ranked alongside tigers and bears as vicious, deadly beasts. Not long ago, a party of 7 or 8 seasoned hunters had ventured into the bamboo grove after boars, returning bloodied and empty-handed. That Zhao Mu had slain one single-handed spoke volumes of his bravery, nothing like the worthless layabout he'd once been. Zhao Mu smiled silently at their wary, respectful stares. He dragged the boar down slowly on purpose instead of hiding it, and summoning his elder brother to help haul it later. He wanted to prove his strength to the village, to show everyone he was no longer the rogue of old. He had not planned for his nephew's yell to draw the entire village out, saving him the trouble of parading the carcass through town to display his catch. Satisfied with the outcome, he urged Zhao Quan to help lift the boar. Zhao Mu had never kept decent company, only fair-weather drinking buddies. But honest Zhao Quan had a handful of loyal acquaintances. Several stepped forward to heave the boar downhill together, all grinning from ear to ear. The boar's passage through the village drew crowds lining the streets, young and old craning to gawk and chatter about its menacing features. Some pointed at Zhao Mu, not with scorn this time, but unreserved admiration. Only Li Xiuxiu's family stood among the onlookers with dark, glowering faces. Liang Chun's cheeks flushed with pride as neighbors praised her brother-in-law. She chatted excitedly with the men helping carry the boar. "See? I told everyone our third boy has turned over a new leaf. He's a good man now. Powerful too. None of you believed me before." The villagers nodded along politely. Soon the boar arrived at the Zhao household. Son Lianji hurried out of the house to greet the crowd, gasping in shock at the massive carcass. "Goodness gracious, what creature is this?" A villager laughed. "Aunt Lianji, this wild boar was hunted by your Zhao Mu." Zhao Dezhu, who had been drinking water inside, sprayed his mouthful all over the floor at the news. Ignoring his lingering injuries, he hobbled outside. He'd been worn thin these past days, confined to bed to recover, yet forced to rush about nonstop thanks to Zhao Mu's reckless antics. Just when he thought his son had finally woken up to reason, the boy stirred up more commotion than ever before. Zhao Dezhu shakily stepped into the yard. Staring at the 3-chi-long boar on the ground, he nearly fainted. No joy or admiration softened his face, only anger as he glared at Zhao Mu. He'd lectured his son at length, and Zhao Mu had nodded and agreed obediently, only to slip off hunting dangerous boars behind his back, dragging the beast home deliberately to show off and humiliate his father. Did he have to pull such grandstanding stunts on his own old man? Zhao Mu read his father's expression instantly and stepped forward with a cheeky, ingratiating grin. "Father, this boar simply had terrible luck stumbling right into my path. You've spent so long teaching me archery and hunting skills, and I've been itching for a chance to put them to use. I unleashed everything you taught me on this beast and brought it down single-handedly. Truly, none of this would be possible without your excellent guidance." His words shifted all the villagers' attention to Zhao Dezhu. Could this old hunter really be that skilled? Had his lessons turned a former rogue into a boar slayer? Zhao Dezhu had not expected such smooth flattery from his son. Filled with swelling pride beneath the villagers' admiring stares, most of his anger melted away. A smile tugged at his lips no matter how hard he tried to suppress it, and he managed only a gruff reply. "You've learned well indeed." The crowd murmured in agreement, holding the veteran hunter in even higher esteem and showering him with compliments. Uncle Zhao served in the army. His hunting prowess is no empty boast. Truly lucky Zhao Mu to have such a capable father. Why can't my old man hunt like this? Mine neither. It's all about having a skilled father to learn from. Their lavish praise of Zhao Dezhu, paired with self-deprecating complaints about their own fathers, filled the elder with glowing satisfaction. Wiping away every trace of irritation, ignoring his aching wounds, he boomed in a deep, resonant voice. "Eldest son, fetch the tools to bleed the boar at once. Once the blood congeals, we'll never drain it fully." Zhao Quan nodded and rushed to gather knives and planks. The Zhao family had hunted for generations, so all the necessary gear was on hand. Minutes later, a wooden slab was set up, blades laid out, and Zhao Dezhu directed his eldest son in bleeding and butchering the carcass. With the main task underway, the onlooking villagers slowly dispersed, unable to bear watching the precious meat without a share. Zhao Mu stopped the few men who had helped haul the boar, pressing a full caddy of meat into each of their hands. They were stunned and hastened to refuse. Meat cost dozens of copper coins per caddy. Simple labor hauling a carcass hardly warranted such a generous reward. Even Zhao Mu's family winced, thinking the gesture wildly wasteful and extravagant. Yet Zhao Mu knew full well his terrible reputation in the village. The townsfolk resented him deeply. Intimidation alone would never win them over. He needed to build goodwill. It would be hard to sway the rest of the village, but these few men willing to speak and lend aid deserved close ties. Green Dragon Village was mostly populated by the Li clan, leaving the Zhaos as outsiders. Without allies to speak up for them during conflicts, they would suffer greatly. Zhao Dezhu understood this too. Adopting the stern bearing of the household elder, he insisted the men accept the meat. They left clutching the pork, overjoyed and grateful, promising to stand by the Zhao family whenever they needed help. Once all the guests departed, most of the boar's blood had drained away. Zhao Quan clumsily set to work scalding off the bristles and cutting the meat. He was no professional butcher, and this was his first time dressing a wild boar. Without Zhao Dezhu standing by to guide them, they would have fumbled around with this pig the entire day. Liang Chun and son Lianji bustled about lending a hand too. The pig bristles were valuable and had to be saved. The pig's blood was precious and set aside. All the offal was worth keeping. The pig bones weren't to be wasted either. Truly, every single part of a pig was a treasure. The whole family busied themselves processing the boar. Though Zhao Shaoshan ran back and forth helping out, he kept shooting Zhao Mu resentful little glances. Zhao Mu grew uncomfortable under those glares. He pulled the pig's bladder out from the offal. He washed it clean, blew it up into a balloon, and handed it to the boy. Children were simple after all. He had no birds to play with, but this balloon alone would keep him elated for ages. Holding it proudly, he trotted outside to show off to his playmates. No sooner had the little boy left than an unpleasant old man showed up. The village head paid them a visit. The village head's name was Li Fuwang. Word had it he'd gotten this petty, unofficial post thanks to a cousin who worked as a magistrate scribe in the county town. Now in his 50s, Li Fuwang abused his tiny bit of authority to embezzle money and accept bribes, living off fine food and drink. Surprisingly, he looked a full 10 years younger than Zhao Dezhu. His face ruddy and glowing, walking with bold, vigorous strides. He entered the Zhao household accompanied by Li Kongming, his bootlicking nephew. The moment they stepped over the threshold, both men fixed their greedy eyes on the wild boar. "Uncle, there really is a wild boar," Li Kongming said brazenly. "My cousin needs a gift for the county magistrate soon. Why don't we present this boar to him?" Every member of the Zhao family's face darkened. The village head had come to seize their property, and he wanted their entire wild boar. Li Fuwang was clearly tempted, yet he feigned disapproval and snapped at the boy. "Nonsense. This boar was hunted by Zhao Mu. It isn't ours to take." "Zhao Mu? I don't believe that for a second," Li Kongming scoffed. "This good-for-nothing only sneaks around stealing chickens and dogs. There's no way he caught a wild boar. He must have stolen it. We haven't gotten to the bottom of this yet, so watch your tongue." Li Fuwang chided him half-heartedly. Then he turned to Zhao Dezhu. "Brother Dezhu, pay no mind to him. The boy just speaks whatever pops into his head without thinking." Zhao Dezhu's face turned stormy. This pair had come in tag, teaming to scheme for his wild boar. After slandering his son, he brushed it off as careless talk? That was practically stamping a thief's label on Zhao Mu right there. Sun Lianji and her two sons seethed with indignation. Just as Zhao Dezhu opened his mouth to defend his boy, Zhao Mu cut in first. "Li Kongming, you can eat any random food you like, but you can't spout random nonsense. Which of your eyes saw me stealing anything?" Li Kongming was about to fire back, but Li Fuwang shot him a sharp glare and turned on Zhao Mu. "Zhao Mu, have you no manners at all? I'm speaking with your father. What business is it of a junior to butt in?" Emboldened by his uncle's scolding, Li Kongming smirked inwardly. "Brat, I couldn't teach you a lesson up on the mountain, but I'll put you in your place back in the village." Zhao Mu looked utterly baffled. "Village head, I didn't interrupt your talk with my father. You carry on your conversation. I'm only talking to Li Kongming. Is this Azure Dragon Village a place where only you are allowed to speak, and the rest of us can't exchange a word?" Li Fuwang was left speechless, stuck for a retort. He resorted to a sarcastic, sneering tone. "Brother Dezhu, every time Zhao Mu stirs up trouble, I've gone out of my way to urge the villagers not to hold it against him. How can you stand by and let him act so disrespectfully? On an ordinary day, Zhao Dezhu would have given Li Fuwang all due deference. But knowing the man had set his sights on their wild boar, bowing his head now would mean all his years of military service had been for nothing. He fired back with equal sarcasm. "Please don't be upset, village head. Zhao Mu also just says whatever's on his mind without filtering it." Li Fuwang seethed with rage. The man had turned his own words right back against him. "Very well. It seems Brother Dezhu holds my position as village head in contempt." Li Fuwang, unable to win the verbal sparring, he pulled rank to assert his authority. No matter what, he had to get his hands on this wild boar today. His cousin in the county town was waiting for a tribute. If he delivered this fine gift, his cousin might get a promotion. With his cousin climbing higher, he, the village head, would fear no one. He might even grab the position of clan elder someday.